Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. We are here Wednesday, July 17th, 8:47 a.m., not Eastern Standard Time, but as Rick says, this was one of the most creative comments I've seen in a long time about my tardiness, Amit Standard Time. I like that one. AST. All right, folks, we got a lot to talk about. We have a lot to talk about today. Yesterday, Trump gave an interview with Bloomberg. He said a lot of stuff. Part of the reason the markets are down right now, particularly a company called TSM, is down because of Trump's stance on China. So we got a lot to talk about on that. In general, he gave some pretty interesting comments in terms of what he wants to do with monetary policy, the Fed, corporate tax rates. We're going to dive deep into all that stuff, see if any of it's reasonable, any of it's plausible, and basically how the market's kind of internalizing everything that he said. So we're going to talk about that. Palantir, just before I went live, they got an upgrade from Morgan Stanley. Now, it's not a outperform or a buy. It's still a sell and an underperform, but Morgan Stanley thinks we're worth more than $12. So we have now been upgraded from $12 to $20. It's nice to see. It took them a couple of years. I actually have a fun story about this whole situation, because particularly with Morgan Stanley, but very interesting that we are not worth $12 anymore. We are now worth $20. And then Elon Musk. Elon Musk made headlines yesterday. He is absolutely leaving California. X is leaving California. SpaceX is leaving California. Tesla already left California. XAI is already in Texas. All of them are going to Texas. And I think Neuralink, I don't know if their headquarters are in Texas, but I imagine Elon is getting ready to get all of his companies into Texas. Some stuff happened last night, so we got to talk about why that's happening and how that's playing out. And then we'll get into the macro and the great rotation theory. Yesterday kind of proved the great rotation is happening, but there's still more elements. And personally, I'm skeptical if the rotation is happening, because we need a little bit more evidence to definitively say, yes, we are rotating from large caps to small caps. The entire market is red this morning. We'll talk about why the market is red, but intraday moves on this market, as we get into it when the market opens, we're going to really see where money starts to flow. And if it flows into small caps again today for the third trading day in a row, maybe we are getting to the point where small caps and the rotation is happening from large caps into small caps. So we will get into all of that. Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Manny, Adam, Vince is bullish. Walt, June, by the way, we did your technical analysis for ATKR on the market close yesterday. So if you go there, the chapter at the end of the video is for June ATKR. So we did that stock that you wanted to check out. Yesterday on the market close, we did like 10 different stocks, went through a bunch of different TA on market close, and it gave me a better understanding of IWM. So we'll talk more about what it means in the context of small caps from technicals. Not Jerome, Jared, Derb, Tristan, Felicia, Jem, Alex, thank you all for being here today. Gene, what's up? Charles, Dylan. All right, let's get into it. So I think we'll start off with Trump. I think we'll get into that because that's a broader topic. I mean, we can do the Palantir thing first, because that'll take a couple minutes. Then we'll get into Trump. So Palantir got upgraded from Morgan Stanley on the price, but not on the actual performance. $12 to $20, but not like a buy. It's still an underperform. Yesterday, Mizuho also raised their price target from 21 to 22. But they had an underperform. So Palantir's down in the pre-market. I do not think it's because of Morgan Stanley. I think it's primarily because of the fact that the entire market is red. We're going to talk about why the market is red. But it is nice to see that the larger software tech firms that are software and like analysts of the Mizuhos, the Morgan Stanleys of the world that don't really care about defense, they're at least starting to see more potential in Palantir. And we're seeing that from the price target increases, even if we're not seeing a buy rating from them on the stock itself. Now, on Morgan Stanley, it's actually really funny. I talked to a guy who worked at Morgan Stanley a couple months ago, and he told me he personally got permission from Morgan Stanley, the company he worked at, to buy Palantir in his portfolio, his sister's portfolio, brother's portfolio, his family, his friends, right? He was telling all of his friends to buy Palantir, and he got permission to buy Palantir from Morgan Stanley, but he was not able to recommend it to his clients because Morgan Stanley had an underperform and they had a $12 rating. And I thought this was hilarious. And he was laughing about it. He was just like, dude, I had to get permission from my own bank that has our own analysts that are bearish on a name just because I thought those analysts were fucking stupid. And I knew that like Palantir was the real deal. And so he loaded up very heavy in the 14, 15 range. And I was talking to him a couple months ago back when Palantir was like $20. And so he said, I think it's the future. I know it's going to happen. The biggest thing he was excited about was FedStart because he has a government background. So he was like, I think FedStart is something that people really don't understand or appreciate. But it was hilarious because Morgan Stanley, like, he couldn't recommend it. He couldn't buy it for his clients, and he manages a decent amount of money because if he bought Palantir for his clients would be like, yeah, but your analyst in the research department says that this stock is not like a good stock to buy. It's a $12 stock. Why are you buying it at $20? So it's very interesting. Obviously, Morgan Stanley has lost their clients a lot of money on Palantir through opportunity cost. Now, they probably made their clients a ton of money in other stocks, right? But Palantir is one they just didn't get right. And so as a result, they've had to downgrade the name or upgrade the name, even though they think it is still a buy. So now this is typical in a lot of banks. A lot of bank employees, if they disagree with the company's stance on a stock, they can get permission to buy it themselves. But unfortunately, they can't recommend it to their clients legally because if those clients buy it, they're going to be confused with, what the research department says. Whereas Bank of America, Wedbush, et cetera, they've always been bullish on Palantir. So those clients have been able to buy those stocks as well. So here you go. Palantir is down 3% in the pre-market, 27.78. The broader S&P is down as well right now. S&P down almost 1%, 0.97%, 564 to 559. We have gone 351 days without a 2% decline in the S&P 500. Is today going to be the day? I don't know, but it would be very interesting if today's the day, given where in mid-July, July tends to be one of the best month for stocks. August and September tend to be the worst months in the year for stocks. So a lot of people are expecting this kind of 5-10% pullback, and then we rally towards the end of the year. I'm still a little bit skeptical if we need to have that pullback, particularly if Q2 earnings is very well. But it does seem like we're getting a little bit of a sell-off today. The sell-off today is created by a variety of things we'll talk about in the macro. I think the big thing, though, is just that we've had a lot of green. Palantir hit $29, S&P at 564, all-time highs. Bitcoin, we'll talk about that, but Bitcoin's doing really nicely at 64,768. It was at 65 last night, which allowed Robinhood to get to $25 in the 24-hour markets. Right now it's $24.11, but it was nice to see it get to that level. And so as a result, I do think that people are just like taking some profits this morning, and that's kind of what's going on versus, the market getting ready to have a major correction. Now, having said that, and moving on from Palantir, another reason why the market is probably correcting a little bit today, and not really correcting, but just selling off a bit, correcting is closer to 5%, is because of the Trump interview we got yesterday from Bloomberg. So this interview, when this news broke, we were actually on the market close, right at the end of the market close, and the news broke. This is the headline from the news. This is what everyone is talking about from this interview. Yeah, NVIDIA is down. We're going to talk about NVIDIA as well. Trump said he would lower corporate taxes to 15%. I heard this. We were finishing up with Jason, and we were actually doing June stock, ATKR. We were doing some technical analysis on that. And then shout out to Gene. He put it in the chat, and we were like, oh, boy. I mean, currently the market tax rate for corporations is 21%. By the way, that's lower from, I think, like 32% from 2017. That's when the Trump tax cuts got passed. He needed the House and the Senate. If you're not from the United States, the House and the Senate just composes Congress. So you have the executive branch, which is the White House, and then you need those two branches of government to agree. So he had all three of them in 2017 because all three of them went red, majority Republican. And so he got his tax cuts passed. Biden had all three being blue, and he got his infrastructure bill passed in 2021. So both of them had kind of different agendas. Trump really focused on tax cuts, Biden focused on infrastructure. But now, for him to get 15% corporate tax rates, Trump would need to win the White House, but he would also need Republicans to win the Senate and the Congress, because otherwise there would be just no way for him to really get the job done and get that corporate tax rate to 15%, which I don't know how realistic that is. So we'll touch on that more in a little bit, but a couple other things Trump said. Number one, he said he shows lukewarm support for Taiwan. He said, Taiwan took our chips business from us. They're immensely wealthy. And he also questioned whether it's in the United States' best interest to protect Taiwan in case of an invasion. And so that's why you see TSM down 5% right now, because if Trump gets elected and China does feel the now it's 5.9%. If China did feel the wherewithal to say, hey, Trump's not going to do anything, let's get this done, and Trump actually doesn't do anything, which I think he would at the time. I think he's just saying this right now in the campaign. I'm pretty sure he would, intervene if something happened like that. Then that's why TSM is down right now, because obviously if TSM doesn't have the support of the United States, that would be bad. Now, granted, maybe Trump's serious about this. Maybe he just doesn't want to help any of these other countries. We'll see. But that right now is hurting Taiwan semi. Number two, he said he would let Powell finish his term as a Fed chair. We know Trump has been very critical of Jay Powell. He is not like Jay Powell at all, but he says, again, stuff you say in the beginning of the campaign, things change when it becomes real life. Now he's saying, look, I'll let him finish his Fed term. He said, as long as he's doing a good job, which is hilarious. And that would finish Trump's presidency as well. It would go well into the 3-4 years that Trump has to be president. He also said he would consider Jamie Dimon as Treasury Secretary, which is really interesting. I don't know if Jamie Dimon would want to have that job. That would be very interesting, but maybe Jamie Dimon does retire from JP Morgan. He has been selling a ton of JP Morgan stock for the first time in 20 years. So that would be interesting. I'm assuming JB Dimon has the ego to be the Treasury Secretary. I definitely would like to have control over that space because he thinks highly of himself as the CEO of one of the biggest banks in the world, but it would be interesting to see if that actually plays out. And he no longer wants a TikTok ban. Now, we covered this months ago. Jeffrey Yass, owner of Susquehanna Group, owns a crap ton of DJT stock. He's supporting Trump vigorously. He owns $22 billion worth of TikTok. If TikTok gets banned, that stake of $22 billion probably goes to like $5 billion overnight. So I would imagine that if Trump gets into office, he would reverse the TikTok ban, which, I know a lot of people think the TikTok ban is good and national security, all this stuff. Given the relationship we have with China, maybe it's not the worst idea in the world to like allow China to have their TikTok app just to make sure they kind of stay in check and don't do other stuff. Now, I agree 100% it's a national security threat, but if you get rid of it, who knows what China does? Whereas if you keep it, maybe China actually gets friendlier and maybe Trump uses it as a bargaining chip for different trade policies. I don't know how he's thinking about it, but those are some of the headlines for what he wants to do. And it's going to be really interesting to kind of see how that plays out and how the market ultimately interprets it. Now, the big thing last night is when he said that corporate tax rate to 15%. If that happens, earnings per share on companies are going to dramatically increase. I mean, just like the bottom line on companies, their net income is going to go higher because they're going to have to pay less in taxes. And so as a result of that, the market's not pricing that in right now. If a Trump presidency and a Republican House and Congress gets closer to becoming real, maybe the market starts saying, well, okay, we definitely think Trump's going to win. We think he's going to get the House. We think he's going to get the Senate. So let's price in this 15% corporate tax rate. That's probably going to happen. And as a result of that, companies are going to get re-rated. Apple, that barely pays any taxes anyway because all their money's in Ireland, they're going to have to pay even less taxes, right? So it's just like, it's going to create more shareholder value. That is the good part of what shareholder value looks like. The problem is, how the hell do we pay for it? Right. So to give the opposite side now, that was the bull case. The shareholder in me was like, yes, 15% corporate tax rates because all my companies that I invest in, they're going to pay less taxes. They're going to have more money. They can give more dividends, buybacks, yada, yada. The part of me, the kid that went to public school in America and actually like was the beneficiary of people who pay taxes. Because public school, obviously it's funded through tax dollars. Like, how do we cover our deficit? We already have a low corporate tax rate. Now, personal income tax revenue is the highest tax revenue out of all the different segments of tax revenue that we have. But if we were to lower the already low corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%, it would have to create so much growth. We're talking Ronald Reagan growth, 1980s, just unleash the machine for massive supply side economics theory to actually have an impact on top line revenue growth, which would create more personal income tax revenue growth, which would create more jobs, et cetera, and would just create this booming economy. I'm not sure if a 15% tax rate would do that. I think it would definitely help to try to do that. I don't know if it is enough to overcome the deficit, which would be well into the trillions if we were to lower those tax rates. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this plays out. Rodney says public school is funded by property taxes, not corporate or income taxes. Okay, that's a fair point. My broader point was just metaphorically, taxes do matter, right? In the broad scheme of things. As I get older, I realize how much paying taxes sucks, but I do know that taxes are important. So yes, like obviously corporate or income taxes probably wouldn't necessarily affect public school and a variety of other things that are funded by public taxes, but they would be important. And so the question is that I think all of us have to reconcile with this is the corporate tax and what the corporate tax is paying for right now, if we were to reduce that, would the amount of growth in that corporate tax, would the amount of growth from lowering that corporate tax massively outweigh, like when I see massively outweigh, it has to massively outweigh keeping tax rates where they are right now. By the way, Biden wants to increase it to about 25 to 27%. So if Trump does lose, they're definitely getting increased. You could definitely expect a little bit of a hit on stocks from the sheer fact that they're going to have to pay more in taxes. But if Trump wins and they even stay the same, I think the market would like it at 21%. They would just renew the 2017 tax cuts. Or if they lower it, Obviously, the market would like it. The question is just, are we going to be able to pay for all the things we have to pay for? And so it's going to be a very interesting question to see what happens. I agree with Hines right here as well. 15% is just a number to be negotiated in the end. 1,000%. It might not be 15%. Maybe it's 17. Maybe it's 19 at the end. Maybe it's 20.5, and it's 50 basis points down from 21%. But if there is some way for Trump to kind of get taxes lower and address his agenda, then that's ultimately what's going to get the market very excited. So I guess we're going to have to see. Now, Rock and Ronnie says right here, tariffs will create inflation. This is another reason the market's a little upset right now, if I had to guess, is because they're annoyed that if Trump gets elected, as you can see, Alibaba's down in the pre-market. A lot of Chinese stocks are down. He's going to insinuate that we should have tariffs on goods coming in from China. We should not have taxes on corporations, but rather we should have taxes on China even being able to import this stuff. Or export it from their homeland into the United States. And as a result of that, that could make goods a bit more expensive. That could potentially increase inflation. But if consumers have disposable income, if corporations, and think of all the different vendors in the supply chains of a corporation. I mean, Apple, I would imagine, has hundreds of different vendors that help them just to be able to make one iPhone that you and I buy in the United States or across the world. All of those corporations, because all of those are corporations at the end of the day, even if they're not trillion-dollar companies, they will pay 6% less if they're in the United States on corporate tax rates. And so the interesting thing about that is that the value and growth across the entire supply chain should increase, but someone will have to pay for it. And if it's China with tariffs, does that equal a trade war? Does that equal higher prices? Or does the disposable income that consumers have because corporate tax rates go down and because overall growth increases in the United States because corporations have more money to spend, does that offset the deficit that we would create from losing that tax revenue? It's going to be a very interesting question, and I think we're going to have to see how that plays out, but that's at least one of the arguments that Trump made. Now, final thing on Trump, billionaires are completely getting ready to support Donald Trump. The shift we are seeing in Silicon Valley is something that I have not seen in a very, very long time. I was on the phone yesterday with Derek. Everyone knows Derek, friend of the channel. He's been in Silicon Valley for a long time, been a avid VC investor, and he knows Silicon Valley. He told me yesterday he cannot believe the type of people that are openly coming out and saying they're voting for Donald Trump. So here's a list of some of these people. Ben Horowitz, we'll talk about him in a second because he's very important even if people don't know him. Bill Ackman, more New York City, Wall Street side. Cameron Winklevoss, Doug Leone. For those that don't know Doug Leone, he is the founder, I believe the founder, but he's one of the top guys at Sequoia, the company that seeded Google when they were worth a couple $1 million. The most Democrat of Democrat in Silicon Valley. He's like, nope, I'm voting for Trump. Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen. This was a big one. Joe Lonsdale. We kind of knew Joe Lonsdale would go Trump. Jacob Hellberg. He's a senior advisor to Trump. Peter Thiel, obviously. Sean McGuire. This guy is another partner at Sequoia. He was super Clinton and Biden. He completely changed his stance, particularly over some concerns around Israel. And then Mark Andreessen, which was another big one yesterday. Mark Andreessen, a partner at the Andreessen Horowitz Fund. So the podcast I watched yesterday, which I recommend everyone watch, I listened to this podcast in its entirety, an hour and 30 minutes. I'm going to put it in the chat. I really think people should listen to this one. These are two billionaires basically explaining why they ended up voting or why the firm is voting for Donald Trump. And it was quite surprising to see because these are two people that have been lifelong Democrats their entire life. There it is in the chat. And they are the pinnacle of Silicon Valley. They funded Instagram and Facebook and Airbnb. I mean, these are tech guys through and thin. And they believe that Trump's presidency is going to be better for what they call the little tech agenda. Now, what is the little tech agenda? The little tech agenda is basically saying, hey, we've got the big tech companies that exist, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, Google, etc. These guys funded a lot of those companies in the early days. But if we don't want monopolies to exist, if we don't want NVIDIA to have all the power on GPUs forever, then we're going to need to fund the Palantirs of the world, the Andurils of the world, the Stripes of the world to compete with the PayPals of the world. Like, we're going to need other companies that are up and coming to be able to have a chance against big tech. The podcast was very insightful. And the reason the podcast was so insightful, a lot of people will think, oh, it's because of taxes, because billionaires don't want to pay taxes. It's actually because of two main things. And I was shocked when I heard this. These guys are big crypto investors. They raised $4 billion to invest in crypto. You can believe in crypto companies. You don't have to believe in crypto companies. The point is, crypto is here. It's not going anywhere. Some companies will win. Some companies will fail. but companies obviously should have a chance to succeed in the marketplace. The Biden administration, along with the SEC, which is Gary Gensler, who is one of Biden's top picks, along with Elizabeth Warren's top pick, has refused to agree on any rational, sensible legislation around cryptocurrencies. And so these guys who are investing billions of dollars a year into crypto, they're like, we cannot vote for an administration that doesn't even want to talk to us about cryptocurrencies. And if you contrast that to the Obama years, because they lived through the Obama years and the Clinton years, Obama and Clinton were very pro-business, and they were at least willing to listen to the new technological innovations of the time, even if they didn't fully agree with how those businesses were set up. They went out into the podcast when you listen to it that the Biden administration has unequivocally shown zero support for crypto. They don't want to talk about crypto. Biden banned a bill that was a bipartisan bill to be able to create more legislation around is a crypto token a security or a commodity. And it got to the point where they're like, there is no way we can vote for these guys. There's just no way. So that was the first thing. The second thing that they talked about is AI. And so their argument here is that when they met with Trump, Trump unequivocally believes that the United States has to be a winner when it comes to AI, because if we're not a winner, then China is going to win. The Biden administration, although they believe some of those same ideals, they have been a bit more active on the regulatory front, basically unlocking the Microsoft OpenAIs of the world, the Anthropics of the world, and the Googles of the world to have all the power on these foundation models. And as we understand about LLMs and AI, if we don't have many players in the foundation model space, or just different threats of competition to the foundation models, this is why Elon is building XAI, then you have something that can become biased. You have something that can influence the way the world thinks. Obviously, Google has all the power in the world because everyone searches on Google. If everyone starts searching on ChatGPT and Sam Altman has a particular worldview, and that worldview is influenced through the outputs of that LLM, that can get very scary very quickly, along with the fact that obviously Sam has not really cared that much about safety. We've seen this over the past couple months, and the Biden administration really isn't doing anything about it. So from their perspective, the crypto economy and the AI economy, which are going to be two of the most important sectors over the next 2 decades, if America's not the leader, we're the loser. And if we're the loser, the argument becomes which administration creates policies that are friendly for the winner. And as a result, if you look at Trump's agenda from their perspective on crypto and AI, they think he is going to be the best president. So this was an emotional podcast for them because they have been lifelong Democrats. It was very interesting to listen to. These are guys that did not want to vote for Trump. It's not like they're not like Elon Musk saying, I support Trump and I endorse him and I love Trump. Like there was moments of the podcast where they realized their friends were quite literally going to hate them because they've just been Democrats their whole life. But for the future of their business, there's no other way they can rationalize how they vote in this election. So this is going to be a very interesting election in terms of how it plays out. Final thing I'll say on this, and then we'll get to some more macro, is that unrealized gains. So if you look at the Biden budget proposal for 2025, there is a section that if you are worth $100 million or more, you will have to pay 25% unrealized capital gains on your stock, equity, real estate, whatever it means. So if you're worth $100 million or more, which you might think it doesn't affect you because you're not worth $100 million, it affects a lot of people that are in that world because a lot of those people create a lot of the wealth and ironically, a lot of the tax revenue for the United States. Basically, they said our VC firm would not exist. The Andreessen Horowitz VC firm that has funded some of the most amazing companies in the world, Airbnb, Instagram, etc. They said it would cease to exist because all of the equity they have on paper of the startups they funded that have not gone public, that have not IPO'd, that have not been acquired, that would be taxed 25% per year. And you can't just give the government shares of private stock. You can't give the government Bitcoin. You have to find the dollars to pay for that tax. And what they brought up, which I did not know about back in 2000 when Cisco collapsed, apparently, a ton of employees had very attractive options on Cisco because they joined early. And so they exercised those options. The stock was here. The options were here. So they made a crap ton of money in the middle. However, to exercise those options, as anyone knows who has options in a corporation, you have to pay taxes, right? And you have to pay for the stock that you are ultimately buying at the end of the day. Cisco then drops. So most people, what they do is they take the difference between where they exercise the option and the option itself. Let's say you exercise it at $10 and the stock's at $500, right? And so you've got a juicy deal. And then you take that money and you use some of that money to pay for all the stock that you bought at $10 that you exercised. Well, what if the stock goes to $5? Well, now, which is basically what happened to Cisco, it dramatically flipped and the market crashed. Apparently, some of those people, they were saying anecdotally, Andreessen was talking about it in the podcast, they had to sell their home. They had to sell their car. There were car repossessors coming into the Cisco parking lot. And I didn't know this story. And I thought it was fascinating because it just shows the harsh reality of why companies matter in the broader ecosystem of the planet. Like if a company's stock falls and people are relying on that company, not only to pay for the bills, their salaries, et cetera, but they have stock options in that company. And if that company flips overnight and you exercise those options and you're left holding the bag, I mean, you're done. And you have to find a way to pay for those options and pay the taxes that are required by law. So if you were to tax unrealized gains, even if it were only for the people that are worth $100 million, a lot of those people end up creating a lot of wealth in the United States. The incentive for them to create wealth is because one day they could be worth more than $100 million. That was the nail in the straw for Andreessen and Horowitz. And that's why they decided to end up voting Trump. So we have seen a complete shift. Again, I was on the phone with Derek yesterday. He could not believe the amount of people in Silicon Valley that are calling him and saying we're voting for Trump. Like he just couldn't believe it. And so if that shift is happening, it's going to now be a question on what ends up happening for the election and how the election ends up playing out. And how the markets are going to be interpreting what happens to the election. Here's a 1 minute, 30-second clip from CNN just talking about what the Electoral College of votes look like. And then we'll move on and get to the macro.
So look at the map right now. That gets Donald Trump to 303. And there's new polling today that shows the president's approval rating in these battleground states is below 40. The president's ballot number right now is below 40 in most of those states, and it's at 42 in Nevada. It's very hard in 16 weeks. We count the votes 16 weeks from tonight to turn that around. Plus, Democrats are now worried. They think, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but what they're saying is the president's going to have to spend more time and more resources on places like Virginia because it's competitive, on places like New Hampshire because it's competitive. You look at this map as it plays out, and there are Democrats making the case, and we have Wisconsin blue here. Let's move Wisconsin over here. There are Democrats making the case that Donald Trump is on a viable path as of today to get to 330 electoral votes, Wolf, or even higher, because they see other states in here. The Trump campaign says Minnesota. The Trump campaign says maybe New Mexico. Let's be cautious. Those are blue states traditionally, but the president's standing, his approval rating, his ballot number, people's views about how old he is, and people who view the state of the economy are very bad for the president right now. And so even if you just go back to where we start, Donald Trump is in command. The numbers are getting worse for the president, Wolf, and Donald Trump has an opportunity with this convention to build it even more.
So Electoral College looking like it has a shot to go for Trump. By the way, Nancy Pelosi, breaking news last night at I think it was like 1 a.m. I think this news broke, or 12:30 from Politico. Pelosi says Biden should drop out. So that is confirmed from Fox and Politico. I guess we don't have an official statement from Pelosi yet. If she comes out and she makes an official statement, that'll be a big deal. But they are reporting that sources are saying that she believes Biden should drop out. I don't think Biden's going to drop out still. I think he's going to run, but it's just going to be a question of how this ends up playing out in the next couple of weeks. And by the way, they've got to announce it soon. I mean, we're going to be voting, guys, in America in 16 weeks. In 16 weeks, we will be voting for the president of the United States of America. So the decisions are going to have to be made pretty soon before we get into the next debate. Now, this final comment right here, I think, is a really good comment. Someone just said, Revis says, this is the finance world. Keep in mind, there's a demographic that votes for different issues like crime, border, education, etc. Yes. And so this is going to be a battle of ideas. A lot of people that are in finance historically have voted Republican, conservative, right? Lower taxes, etc. There's a lot of people that don't give a shit about lower taxes and stocks and real estate. Like they care about social issues. They care about the Supreme Court. By the way, Biden is going to be announcing a plan today, Washington Post reported, to overhaul the Supreme Court system and have term limits on Supreme Court justices. So Biden should be announcing that later today. I think he might do a press conference on that. Would be very interesting to see how that plays out. But the point is, there's a lot of people that care about other things, right? They care about the environment. They care about green energy. Maybe Trump's not the most green president, right? So it's going to be a battle of ideas, and the question is going to be which ideas ultimately beat the other ideas, and we'll find out in the next 16 weeks. As I'm Beneficial said, it depends on what people care about the most. That is correct. All right, let's get into some earnings. So we got a bunch of earnings that we got to talk about this morning. It looks like earnings season, folks, continues to go well. We are not having crappy earnings, which is really, really important. So let's start off with J&J. So J&J, let me just give you some of the headline numbers, then we'll look at the actual stocks. J&J EPS beat by 4%, 282 versus 270. Revenue 22.45 billion versus 22.3. Now J&J slightly lowered their guidance, but I was listening to the CEO talk about it. It was more because of like the SEC's regulatory thing that they need when you do an acquisition. It's not because they're not growing as much. So slight lower on guidance. That's why I think the stock is not up as much as it could be up. But Johnson & Johnson continuing to show the market is resilient. They're down about 0.54%. They were down 1% about 30 minutes ago. ASML, very important company in the semiconductor space. EPS of 432 versus 405. They beat by 6.7%. Revenue, 6.72 billion versus 6.57 billion. They beat by 2.3%. Now, very interesting on ASML and a couple of things that ASML actually said. So here are the highlights right here from their earnings. This is one of the bigger companies this week, along with Netflix, that's going to be reporting. Their guidance is what I think the street is upset about, which is why the stock is down 8% right now in the pre-markets. Now, also the stock was up like 43% year to date. So, I mean, it was bound. If there was some numbers that weren't the best, it was going to take a little bit of a hit. So yeah, it's down 8% right now. So the Q3 revenue, instead of doing about 7.5 billion euros, they're doing 7.3. And gross margin, instead of being 51.4%, it's going to be about 50 to 51%. So they didn't lower full year revenue, but they did lower Q3 revenue. And that makes sense. Everyone knows semiconductors don't do as well, or semi stocks historically don't do as well in Q3. It has to do with the demand cycle. It has to do with the refresh cycle. So it makes sense that they're lowering guidance for Q3, but the fact that they're not lowering it overall is very important. Now, here's one of the sentences that the CEO said right here. The industry expects to be in a cyclical upturn in 2025. As a result, we need to prepare for a number of new fabs that are being built today across the globe. These fabs will be spread geographically and are strategic for all of our customers. They are all scheduled to take our systems. While there are still uncertainties in the market, primarily driven by the macro environment, we expect industry recovery to continue into the second half of the year. So there is no argument from ASML that the market is not going to be able to hold up the demand that it is currently held up, which has led to some of these amazing multiples we've seen in the broader semi sector. We'll see what happens when NVIDIA reports and AMD and all those guys. But as a result, ASML is showing that they can do a good job. Now, NVIDIA is down, 4% in the pre-markets. Last time I checked, it was about 1.5%. So it's down another 2.5%. The S&P is down 1.07%. Remember, we have not had a green or a red S&P in basically the past year, 351 days. If today's the day we start to see a red S&P, it's not necessarily the markets crashing to me, because the question is going to be, is this bad boy IWM going up? And if IWM is going up while the S&P is going down, maybe we start to get a little bit more momentum in the context of small caps. Right now, it's down about 1% of the pre-market. So maybe it moves with the market, maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't move with the market, then we're going to see potentially an inverse relationship between IWM and NVIDIA. Now, speaking of IWM, let's talk a little bit about small caps. I think what's happening, at least what was happening yesterday with IWM and NVIDIA, and again, we'll see how the market opens on IWM, is I think NVIDIA was the hot girl at the bar. And she showed up, she was at the bar, she was flaunting her hotness, and every guy wanted to buy her a drink. I mean, people wanted to buy this girl a drink. They could not buy her a drink. I mean, every guy was thinking, you know what? We need to go up to her and buy her a drink. What happened with NVIDIA, and I'm very serious about this. What happened with NVIDIA? She got to the bar. Everyone was buying her a drink. And then she got a little bit too cocky. She started showing off how hot she was. She started realizing how hot she was. And like the most important thing, if you're hot, and I know this from experience, is you don't want to flaunt your hotness because it makes other people feel insecure. It shows you don't have any humility. You're not as humble. So it's very important, if you're hot, if you're attractive, if you're part of the elite part of the planet like myself that is hot, you don't want to flaunt your hotness because then people have resentment against you. But that's what NVIDIA did. NVIDIA went up to 140. And so, she started showing a little bit over the shoulder at the bar. And then people are like, all right, we get it. You're hot. But now we're getting tired of you. And NVIDIA to me was Skylar from Good Will Hunting type of hot, right? She was hot. But then guess who walked into the bar? IWM. And IWM is Katie from Mean Girls. Katie from Mean Girls is the outcast. She's the girl that is super gorgeous, super beautiful. I mean, this is the type of girl that smiles and her dimples show up and you just want to hold her purse in public. You're like, oh my God, I'm in love with this girl. But she doesn't show off that she's hot. She doesn't show it off. She'll wear a sweatpants and a hoodie to the bar. She doesn't have to wear a dress showing off one shoulder. By the way, that one shoulder dress, that drives me crazy. It's the most attractive thing in the world. But like that's what Katie does. And everyone is interested in the girl with the hoodies and the sweats at the bar. Because why the hell are you wearing hoodies and the sweats at the bar? And it's because when you take that hoodie off, it is a gorgeous woman who actually is growing earnings 11% more than the S&P, has assets inside of her like KRE and XBI that we talked about yesterday on the market close that are prone to start increasing because they've been beaten up over the past 2 years. And so the market starts realizing, why would we buy an entire $200 bottle of red wine for NVIDIA when we can buy an $18 Moscow Mule for IWM? And that's why I think Katie from Mean Girls is getting all the love right now and NVIDIA's not. And I think this is what happens when you flaunt your hotness, dude. No one likes someone that's not humble, especially someone who is attractive and not humble about the fact that they are attractive. Again, I know this from experience. If you're around people and you're the hottest person, you've got to make it seem like you're not hot, because those people will be insecure. So I think what's happening right now for the broader market, I think Tom Lee was correct on this. At the end of the day, the market wants the humble, hot girl, not the girl that thinks she's hot. And as a result of that, the market is transitioning to IWM. IWM had its best day yesterday against the S&P. We're talking about a 5% divergence of all time. I mean, it was the greatest day for IWM against the S&P in its history of being being an actual company. So this is the chart right here, being an index, which I think has been around for about 20 years. This is what it looks like. This was the best 5-day gain relative to the S&P 500 ever. That happened yesterday. I don't think that can be ignored. The last time we got that high was 2018. And the last time we got that high, the third biggest day was 2016. And then the last time we even get close to these levels is 1988. So the fact that the Russell outperforms the S&P that deeply yesterday is when that happened. To me, in 7 minutes when the market opens, all eyes are on IWM. Does the market have the momentum to say NVIDIA's down 4%? We're up a lot on NVIDIA. Let's not be overweight NVIDIA. Let's transition to where Stanley Druckenmiller transitioned 15% of his portfolio, and he's up a lot of money now. And let's take a chance on Katie, the girl who's humble, not the girl who's flaunting her hotness. And so I think that's what's happening. I think that's what's happening right now. The best girl analogy from a gay person I've ever heard. Would you guys believe I thought of that on the spot? Would you guys believe I thought of that entire analogy and metaphor and story and executed it flawlessly? Talk about being humble, right? On the spot. Because if you did believe that, you'd be wrong, because I wrote this on Twitter last night. Dude, I was in the car. Literally, I was in the car. I came back from returning something to Kohl's. By the way, Kohl's and Amazon, that partnership is incredible, because the only reason people go to Kohl's is to return shit from Amazon. So shout out to Kohl's. They did a really good job getting Amazon with that return partnership. I got in the car. I don't know how I got this idea. This is like a little quirk about being a content creator. You get an idea. I got in the car. I turned off the car because I didn't want to leave the car running with the AC and the gas and all this stuff. So I turned it off. So I'm like hot in the car, but I didn't want to get out of the car. I had this idea while I was in the car. And I was like, I got to write this. And I just started writing. And then 20 minutes goes by. People thought this was ChatGPT. Like, no, dude, this was literally me sweating in the car, getting out this analogy. And it's nice that people appreciated it. But I don't know, for some reason, it just struck me. It was just like a stroke of genius. Again, humble. You got to be humble here. But the stroke of genius came and I was like, holy shit, I need to write this down. And that's how this analogy ended up becoming a thing. And thankfully I was able to just do it off the head, and I wasn't reading off Twitter while I was doing it in the market open. So the point is, IWM is hot. NVIDIA was hot. She's not hot anymore. And the question is going to be, how hot does IWM end up becoming? Have you seen Intel? Let's look at Intel. Is Intel down a little bit too much? Intel, oh shit, Intel's up 4%. Well, that's quite the divergence. Intel's up 4%. NVIDIA's down 4%. Intel should not be up when TSM and NVIDIA are down 5 and 4%. That's very interesting. That is very, very interesting. Maybe you should consider poetry, Amit. You know, I've thought about it. But I realize analyzing the stock market is more important. I have a greater duty in life, so probably won't end up being a poet. But you guys will get some of my poetry on the market open. Wow, why is Intel up? Why is Intel? Because of Trump saying he makes our trips when abroad. Yeah, that's a good point. Trump said we need to stop making our chips abroad. Intel already started a factory, I believe, in Arizona, and it's going to be scaling by 2027. That's when Intel said they'll be profitable on their foundry business. Yeah, that's an argument. I mean, if Trump gives more subsidies to Intel or supports Intel more over see, this is the crazy thing about a Trump presidency, guys. I don't know if people remember back in 2016 to 2020, but stocks would move up and down based on him. Like, I remember one time he tweeted some shit about Jeff Bezos and he said something like mean about him. I forgot what he said. And Amazon went down 2% that day. And I wasn't even like, I didn't even really understand the markets that much, but it didn't take a rocket scientist to be like, Trump doesn't like Amazon. Amazon stock is down. So when we get a Trump presidency, we will see statements like Biden's not going to make a random statement about a company. I mean, he does from here to here, from time to time, but Trump does it almost every other day. That will definitely affect the stock market. And obviously his broader opinions on China is going to have an impact on all companies, given all companies have supply chains that exist in China. Interesting. That's very interesting. Wow. Intel is really up on that. That's absolutely incredible. Meta forward PE of 21 getting cheaper. Yeah. Meta, it's down another 2% pre-markets. Yeah. Down 2.4%, 478. I like Meta at this level. I'm not going to lie. Now, granted, if the entire market's correcting, Meta's probably going back to 420, 430. But if we don't have a 10% correction, I like Meta at 470 and below. I mean, even 480 and below, it's not bad. I think earnings, they crush. The question becomes, and again, this is why the next couple of weeks are so important. I kind of don't believe Nvidia's down 4% right now. It's going to stay down 4%. I think people buy the dip because they've historically, every single time Nvidia has a 4 to 5% pullback, they buy the dip. And so the last time we saw Nvidia down here was at that 118 level. People bought the dip from there. We will have to see if Meta has the capacity to go to 420. Nvidia has the capacity to go back to 105 if Q2 earnings beat and the market doesn't care, and or the market starts transitioning again into Caddy versus Skylar. And if they like Caddy over Skylar, the money has to come from somewhere. Either it's coming from money market funds or it's coming from selling off big tech. And if you already have big gains in big tech or you're overweight big tech, you're not going to feel afraid to diversify a little bit. And that's where IWM can get some momentum. Everyone watched Good Will Hunting, right? Everyone knows Good Will Hunting. That's like the one movie that I've watched that most people know. So I try to use the references. Like, how about them apples? Like, I really like that movie, dude. I think that's a top 5 movie of all time. I think Good Will Hunting's up there. And then Mean Girls is a classic. Everyone's seen Mean Girls. So I think the pop culture references on those movies made sense. Never watched. All right, you got to watch that one. That Matt Damon. Yup. It's one of the best movies ever. Gail, thank you for the 10, or not Gail. Gannicus, thank you for the $10 super chat. If Trump supports U.S. AI expansion, then he has to support Taiwan independence and TSM. You can't have AI without TSM. I agree with you. I don't think Trump can say we want to be the best AI leaders in the world and then not support TSM. 100% agree with you. But I do think he's saying stuff for the campaign right now, and that's just how he's campaigning. Maybe that'll change, maybe not. But 1,000%, there's no way the United States can be an AI leader if Taiwan is not on our side. And so it's going to be interesting to see how his thoughts potentially evolve. We know he's negotiable. We know he can change his mind instantly. And so we'll see what he ends up having to say in the coming months. All right, Wednesday, July 17th, 9:30 a.m. Let's see what happens to IWM and small caps. The stock market is now open. Wake your ass up. Here we go. IWM opens red, 0.82%. It was red a little bit more in the pre-market, so we got a green candle right there. Yeah, it was at 222.07, now 222.83. We'll go back to IWM in a second. Nvidia down 4%. Taiwan down 6%. Meta down 2.68%. ASML down 10%. Market did not like that their guidance was lowered. Alibaba's down. Palantir is a green candle. Palantir was like 27.40, 27.80 in the pre-markets, now 27.99. So that's up a little bit. Robinhood, wow, 24.33. Again, Robinhood was $25 yesterday, and that is Bitcoin is helping that. So Robinhood down a little bit, but still up over the past week and up 7% since Monday. IBKR, they had earnings yesterday, so I'm still going through Interactive Brokers and Schwab. They are competitors to Robinhood. They are much, much bigger, but both of them didn't do that well. IBKR down 5% and Schwab was down 10%. Didn't expect it to be that bad for them. I don't think it's because Robinhood's taking their lunch or anything like that. I think they're just struggling a little bit in some of their other parts of their business. But that is definitely not doing the best for those two companies. IWM now recovering a little bit, 0.74%. Rivian down 2%. Amazon 1.4% down. Air Test Systems is up another 19%. They had a great earnings yesterday. So for those that are in this one, shout out to June. I know June was early on this one in the chat. So congrats to June. This one's doing great. So this one's up 20% and it's had a pretty good month. I think it's up 100% in the past few weeks. So this one's doing very well. DJT up 1.7%. Netflix is down a bit. Grindr down 1.4%. Google, wow, Google approaching the 180s. Haven't seen that in a second. A dip below 180, I think, would get the street a little bit more excited. UiPath 1256, Open Door down 3%, Lemonade 2221 down 1.21%, Hims down 2%, CleanSpark down 2%, MicroStrategy down 2%, Ulta Beauty down 1%. Where's Elf? Elf is down another 2.9%. So the only green I'm seeing, and let me know the stocks that I'm missing that are green. I see Johnson & Johnson, they crushed earnings. They should be green. They're up about a 1%. And then Intel is up 7%. Where else is the green? XLF is a little green. Verizon's a little green. DJT, that's a little green. On sneakers, that's like flat, but it's green. Goldman Sachs is like kind of green, but not really. Monster is a little green. Celsius, where's Celsius? Wow, Celsius down another 1%. Okay, so Celsius down. Let's look at the Mag 7. Mag 7 is all red. Wow, Tesla 253. So Tesla's still holding 250 though. Amazon's down, Google's down, Meta's down, Microsoft's down, Apple's down. Nvidia still down 4%. Pretty incredible, dude. Honest is up. What is going on today? The value stocks are up and then Honest is up. What is the rotation that's happening today? Where's IWM? IWM it's fighting, dude. I mean, it's about to hit 223. It looks like it's about to go fully green for the day. Again, if IWM goes green on the day while the rest of the market is down, I feel like it's still a little too early to say it, but we're getting 70% close to like rotation time is here. Now it's got to fight. It's got to really fight to see if that happens. But if that happens, I think the rotation is here. Now, if the rotation is here, what does that mean for you? SoFi. Wow, SoFi. Holy crap. SoFi was 750 in the pre-market. SoFi went green. Look at that. So what does the rotation mean for you? Well, for one, it means companies like SoFi are going to get a little bit more benefit from the market because I know 8 billion is not a small cap, but still 8 billion is not, a $3 trillion company. And the companies that are sensitive to rate cuts, they're going to benefit. In general, I think there's a couple scenarios on what the rotation means for you. First of all, if you've bought Mag 7 and you're holding it for the next decade or the next 5 years and you have decent averages, the rotation means nothing. It doesn't mean sell your stocks. It doesn't mean reposition and buy up IWM. It just means like, hey, the gains you were getting every single day, 1 or 2%, IWM a little bit closer to green right now. It's not going to happen anymore. And it's going to take some time, right? So it doesn't really mean you have to do anything with your portfolio. Now, if you just bought into the Mag 7, like you got in Nvidia at 130, then it becomes a question of like, hey, if Nvidia is going back to 100 and it will get back to 130 eventually, but for now, that's just not the time. How do you position that portfolio given it's not going to benefit the most from rate cuts? And again, Nvidia might crush Q2 earnings. Skylar at the bar might show off another shoulder, and people might just come back to her at the end of the day. But if we see a real rotation, IWM 0.28% away from turning green, then buying them at these levels may not be the best. But if you bought them, early in the year, then you really don't have to do much from there. SMCI, where is SMCI? SMCI is down 5%. That makes sense. Dell, I'm going to assume, is down 3%. Dell, 4.5%. Dell is down, 120. Dell was 170 last week or 155-ish last week. It was 170 a month ago. Now it's 128. So that one's taking a hit. S&P is not taking too much of a hit. 560. I mean, it's down 0.85%, but people are still buying the dip on the S&P. So 560. Robin at 24.35 like a champ, doing really well. Vlad, by the way, was in some Fortune interview. I'll play a clip of that in a bit. I don't have the full interview, but he talked about crypto and he sounded pretty positive, dude. He sounded like a guy who just fucking crushed Q2 earnings and is getting ready to show the world what they did. So I think Q2 earnings will be good for Robinhood. Real quick thing on Robinhood. Again, when Bitcoin got to 70,000 back in March, Robinhood was $20. And then Bitcoin fell, over the next 3 months, and Robinhood kind of bottomed at like 21.80. Now Bitcoin's at 64. If Bitcoin gets back to 70 and now Robinhood's at 24.35, the base has gone higher. And so I would expect Bitcoin going higher to help Robinhood from these levels, where before it was helping it from a previous level. But because of the actual execution of the company, Robinhood was able to establish a base at a much higher level. And so Bitcoin going up will really help. Bitcoin right here, 64,891. And the GameStop is up 1.2%. The $30 call option for this week, $3 million worth of it was bought 2 days ago. So people are thinking $30 by Friday potentially has some momentum built into it. Some people are thinking Roaring Kitty bought it, but we have no confirmation on that. Look at Palantir. Wow. Back to 28. Again, it just feels Like the market wants Palantir at 28. Ultimate Co says right here, Palantir above 28 again. Is 28 becoming the new floor? One day we will never see 20 again. It's probably not there yet, but soon. These are my exact same thoughts. I talked about it yesterday on Daily Palantir. Maybe right now and over the next couple quarters is not the time where we can definitively say we're done from the low 20s. But every day we close above 28, we are making it more obvious that the 28 level, 27 level is becoming the new base for Palantir, and the low 20s are just gone. Which imagine that, dude. We transitioned from the teens on Palantir. We were stuck in the single digits for about 18 months. Then we were stuck in the teens for about 8 months, that $15 to $17 range. And then since February 5th, we have not seen below $20. If by the end of this year we can do 3 transitions from the single to the teens to the 30s, I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, like, talk about puberty, bro. Talk about Palantir developed a fucking Adam's apple, bro. Like, if we get into the 30s, it's just incredible. Nvidia about to go below 190 right now, down 4.38%. IWM's about to go green, folks. It is 28 cents away from going green. Oh my God. We are about to see small caps go green while the rest of the market is bleeding red. Pretty incredible. Pretty freaking incredible. Celsius down 2%. Honest. Well, that's why Honest is up. Now I know why Honest is up. It's a $400 million company. It's a small cap. Market's buying up Honest. Now, is Honest a good company? I don't know. But the point is it's a small cap, and so the market's going to get momentum. Look at SoFi. Dude, maybe SoFi is the small cap trade of the next 6 months. Maybe. I think that's something like, I guess we all kind of forgot when SoFi was just like in a lot of pain, is that, wait a second, if SoFi, which I know it's not a literal small cap, but if it is the thing that's been disrespected, it's breaking out of a range for the past year, and rate cuts only help their business because they're a bank. They can lend money. Rates get lower. They make more money on the money that they lend. Maybe that's the answer. And if we get any concept of a tech platform starting to emerge, who knows? Maybe SoFi gets re-rated. 785 right here on SoFi. If it goes to $8, that would be very huge. And there's 180 million shares short. 180 million shares short as well. $7 leaps were just 180, now almost $3 in a week. Yeah, let me look at the $10 leaps as well. The $10 leaps on SoFi for 2026. Those are, in the past week, they are up 40%. $10 leaps. And the past month, they're up 43%. They were down basically 50%. Now they're up, as SoFi has gotten closer to 750. So even a $10 leap from 2026, if you bought it in those low sixes, they've not done too bad. Meta's down 2%. Robin at 24.30, Palantir 28.14, GameStop. Wow, GameStop trying to push 30. Bitcoin trying to push 65 again. Where's the crypto stocks? So the crypto stocks today, relatively flat or red. That's because Bitcoin's down a little bit, but all of them did good yesterday. MicroStrategy down a little bit, and Coinbase down 1.44%. Marathon down 1%. CleanSpark up a little bit on the day. Bitcoin right here trying to get to 65,000. If SoFi closed above 8 on Friday, yeah, that would be a big deal. That'd be a very, very big deal. Also, Square is breaking out of its range a little bit. Square is down 1% today, but over the past 5 days, it went from 64 to 73. Now it's 71. So Square also not doing too bad. TSM still down. Nvidia still down. Where's IWM? Are we green yet? No, we got a little red candle right there. We're about 30 cents from being green. So the reason I want IWM to go green, I don't have a position in IWM. I just think that it would be a healthy way for us to end the year if Nvidia doesn't go to 200, but IWM goes closer to 300. It just seems like it makes sense, which means that Nvidia maybe goes down 10% from here, but it would still be up 140%, right? Like, it's not like Nvidia is not going to have a good year. But if anything, if Nvidia doesn't show upwards momentum after Q2, it just means that they're justifying the future growth that is priced in. So they're doing what they do need to do, but they're not getting massively rewarded for that, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world. Now, granted, I think FOMO will take over and people will still get excited for Nvidia, especially if they really raise guidance. But I think it is very healthy to see other people participate in this rally, and it makes a lot of sense. Rivian, $18. That's not bad. Did you see Roche came out with an oral pill for weight loss as an alternative to Ozempic? I did not see that. I did see that a popular rapper, I don't know if you guys know her, she's in the hip hop space. Her name is Ice Spice. Apparently she's on Ozempic and she lost a lot of weight, and now people don't recognize her. So I don't know. It is very interesting how the celebrities are engaging with the drug. But no, I didn't know there was a pill you can eat for weight loss. Interesting. Oral pill for weight loss is an alternative. Well, it was very, very, very interesting. Same thing happened to NVIDIA last year. Yeah, it's just NVIDIA didn't have the sort of astronomical run they had last year. This year obviously has been insane. The thing about NVIDIA, though, I think everyone would be calling it a bubble if we didn't believe that the demand was there. And every single research report that comes out says, no, the demand is obviously there. So it's just a question of how much appetite does the market have to buy it. SoFi 780. SoFi's still fighting. Doing its thing. Meta 475, TSM down now 6%, S&P down about 0.93%, Robin at 2430, and then Palantir here at 2809 on the day. Where's PayPal? PayPal is down. Yeah, see, PayPal's not really a small cap either, and interest rates going down doesn't, like, it helps PayPal, but it doesn't massively help PayPal like SoFi. So if I had to pick between PayPal and SoFi, I think SoFi is in the uptrend. Now, granted, PayPal is deeply undervalued, way more undervalued than SoFi to me. So going long, I still like PayPal, but maybe over the next few months, those rate cuts are going to be a direct beneficiary to SoFi. And if SoFi, here's the thing, they obviously lowered guidance because they knew that the lending business was in a little bit of a turmoil given rate cuts or given high rates. If the Fed cuts 2 to 3 times, at least one time, and they increase the guidance going into Q4 on the Q3 earnings in November, that might be the catalyst that really gets the market excited about SoFi as well. So it's going to be a question of if they raise guidance based on their assumption around where rates are going to go. Oh, GitLab. So this is a good one. Yeah. So GitLab, this is up 10% because they're exploring an acquisition. GitLab, everyone always knew, if you studied a little bit about GitLab, that they were never meant to be a public company. Google was buying so much GitLab stock back in 2021. I think they still have some of it. They sold out of a lot of it, but GitLab was always thought of as a company that was going to be acquired because GitHub got acquired by Microsoft for about $7.5 billion. GitLab right now, $8.84 billion. Not exactly the same company, but they operate in a similar way. So a lot of people thought GitLab was always going to be acquired. Today, it was reported that GitLab is finally like getting ready to put itself up for sale because they probably see the market conditions are the right time where they can get a decent multiple. So GitLab is up right now, up 10%. And I don't think Google would buy them, but I think Google would definitely be interested in looking at if they could buy them. But Google's trying to buy that whiz startup in cybersecurity, so might not be able to do both at the same time. Tesla's green. Wow. Tesla's green. Tesla is green. NVIDIA recovering just a little bit. It was down 4.5%, now down 4.2%. Again, still a red candle, but Tesla going green, showing some signs of life for the large caps. IWM still red. There's still too much selling pressure there. TSM down 6%. S&P gaining a little bit of momentum. Target is down. It's flat for the day. Amazon now below 190. Bezos probably selling a little bit. Charles Schwab, wow, down another 4%. That means it's down. Charles Schwab is down 15% in 2 days. Again, I have to go through their earnings. I know the growth was not good, but it's not like they didn't grow. So that'll be an interesting one to go through and see kind of why the market is upset with them. That one's down. SLG 63, REITs are up, Verizon's up, Apple's down below 230, 228 down 2.8%. Netflix 645, it was at 655 on Monday. Google 181, Shopify 67, they got upgraded yesterday. Novik 1798, 1.5. Uber down 3%, given that Tesla's up. United has earnings today after the bell, so we'll see what happens with United. Delta, we saw had a good earnings, but Street didn't love it. And then SMCI down 5.4% of the day. Look at SoFi. I was trying to get 790. Wow. Look at that. Look at that. Is IWM green? Well, it's like 10 cents from being green, dude. It's like 10 cents from being green. Wow. Wow. Not bad. Sachin, what's up? For those that don't know, Sachin has a pretty big position in SoFi. He went in pretty heavy. And so Sachin's been public about that. He was on the SoFi Weekly a couple weeks ago. So I'm sure today is not a bad day for you, Sachin. You're enjoying today. Let's see if it can crack 8, dude. Let me look at the book flow on SoFi. The volume on SoFi is probably ridiculous right now. SoFi volume currently is 9 million, dude. Goodness gracious. It's been like 15 minutes. Okay, so on SoFi, they have resistance at $8. At $8, there are 227,000 shares waiting to be sold. Until $8, the next sort of high level of resistance would be It's really not there. At 796, there's 6,000 shares, 795, 12,000 shares. I mean, there's like, you're going to need some buy side pressure, but at $8, that's where you need someone to buy a lot of SoFi. But until then, there's a path. There's definitely a path to at least try to break through. What else do we have? Shorts are covering. I don't know if shorts are covering yet. I think they're going to wait till earnings. But maybe they are. Maybe they are. I think a 1% day, that could also just be people buying in anticipation for earnings versus shorts covering. IWM goes green. There you go. So for the third day in a row, Wednesday, July 17th, IWM is red, while NVIDIA is down 4%, SMCI is down 4%, Meta's down 2%, Google's down 1%, and Amazon is down 2%. One guy's left standing, and his name is IWM. Pretty incredible, bro. Pretty freaking incredible. AMD, yeah, AMD is probably taking a hit because of ASML. AMD is down 6%. Oh boy. AMD rallied last week really hard, dude. They really rallied. And if NVIDIA goes below 120, AMD is going to take a little bit of pain. Rivian as well. Again, Rivian not a small cap, but Rivian kind of one of those companies that was left for dead this year. Also, it's kind of like these zombie companies that were not really zombies, like the SoFis, the Rivians of the world, the Honest. I don't know exactly, a ton about Honest, but I imagine they're not a horrible company. Like these companies are finally starting to breathe air, and the market's giving them a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt. KRE definitely was a zombie index, and regional banks to me always were undervalued. And I would have kept my exposure to TFC. I thought Robinhood was a better opportunity. But the regionals were fine. There was not a banking contagion that was going to collapse the regionals. And if you looked at a lot of these, Zion Bank, TFC, a lot of these guys, even New York City Community Bank, when they collapsed, they still were able to recover. It was not catastrophic. So regionals obviously had momentum, and that's why Stanley Druckenmiller bought a ton of regionals, and regionals are a big part of IWM, which is also helping. Where's Enphase? Oh, I want to ask the chat this question. So someone asked me on Twitter last night. I didn't have a good answer. They said, how do you think a Trump presidency affects Enphase? What do you guys think? Do you guys think it goes down the drain because Trump doesn't care about solar and energy and clean energy and all that stuff, and so Enphase suffers? Or do you think Trump unleashes so much growth that more people have disposable income, which is a real thesis, and that disposable income allows them to like buy solar panels or install solar in their home, right? Because now they have extra money and they can afford to get clean energy. What do you think? Because I don't know how Trump necessarily affects Enphase. It's a really interesting one. I don't know if Trump is great for Enphase. Gonna lose tax benefits. Okay, yeah, that's something that could be bad. That something could be very bad. Prob not great. Bearish, it doesn't help. Bad for green energy. Okay, so most of you guys think it's bearish. That's what I thought. That was my gut reaction. But then I was like, well, I mean, if he unlocks growth and solar panels get a little bit more cheaper because the economies of scale in general across supply chains in the world get cheaper, maybe there's an argument for why Enphase benefits. And if rates in general go lower, that's good for Enphase. But he might be a little bit too anti clean energy. Tom Lee's my man and says energy is going negative if Trump is elected. Okay, so this is an interesting thesis. For those that don't understand why Tom Lee thinks energy goes negative if Trump gets elected, is because although Trump will do the whole drill, baby, drill, if there's going to be so much competition, because now everyone's going to be drilling, prices are going to come down, which means the cost per oil, barrels of oil are going to come down. So the kind of core thesis here, even though there's going to be heightened energy demand because there's going to be so many people entering into that marketplace, that demand is not necessarily going to reflect increased shareholder value. If anything, it's going to be great for the consumer, which is what Trump cares about, right? Trump wants to make sure the consumer does well. But if it's not great for the consumer, if it's great for the consumer but not great for the broader markets, then maybe energy doesn't do that well. It's an interesting thesis, but we're gonna have to see how that ends up playing out. Sachin says Trump presidency would be positive for Enphase. It's simple. See his last term, pro-business terms, and he is not like to kill oil to go all solar. He is like, we can get all we can get. See, that's what I thought. I thought maybe the pro-business stance of him outweighs some of the anti-green energy stance that he has. IWM now up almost 0.5%. But I guess we'll see. The market's going to have to figure out how to price that in if he ends up getting elected. Where's SoFi? SoFi trying to go for 8. SoFi 788. It's trying. It is trying. Tesla now went red. Where's Robinhood? Robinhood. Wow. Robinhood 24.55. There you go. That's because Bitcoin's at 65,000. There you go, baby. Robinhood 24.55. Amazing for Robinhood. And then look at Palantir 28.48. So for those that are just joining, Morgan Stanley upgraded Palantir from $12 to $20. So it's very nice to see that Morgan Stanley, after the stock has run up 200% since going public, they finally believe it's worth more than $12. Shout out to the awesome Morgan Stanley research analysts, but they only have it at $20 now. And I guess, $20, you could argue from a valuation perspective, given the growth, you could say that's quote unquote fair value. But I think going back to 20 would given the price action we've seen right now, there's just too much momentum. I was talking about this yesterday on Daily Palantir. There is a cool premium attached to Palantir, and the cool premium is defined as people think you're fucking cool and they want to get exposure to your company and they're willing to pay a little bit more. And I think Palantir has that, dude. Palantir has the swag. They have the leadership. They just have that premium. And that premium is not something to be ashamed of. That premium is just the nature of what it is. When NVIDIA has it, Tesla has it, Amazon has it. Like all these companies have it to an extent. So I think Palantir has it. And I think going back to 20 would be tough. But it's good to see that the market's at least agreeing that it's not worth $12 or $9. Now we just need Rishi to increase his price target. They're at least saying it's in the mid-20s. Mizuho also said $22 yesterday as well. TSM is down 6%, 173. Tesla here at 255, PayPal 6172, Rivian 1828. Wow, IWM going. We're going to be hearing IWM a lot, folks. I mean, it's going for it. Trying to get up 1% today. Trying to get up 1%. And then Robinhood benefiting right here, 24.60. Robinhood almost going green. That's incredible. Regional banks are up 2%. J&J, they're getting the love they deserve after earnings, up 3%. They had a great earnings. They definitely deserve that. So they are up. Another company that had earnings today, Ally Bank, beat EPS by 50%, beat revenue by 0.59%. Let's look at Ally. Ally's down 3%. Okay, so not sure why. I got to go through their earnings, but a beat on EPS and a beat on revenue. I would imagine net interest income, like other banks, maybe is suffering a little bit, and that's why they're down. Also, U.S. Bank had earnings. They beat revenue by 0.71%, $6.84 billion versus 6.79, and EPS 0.98 versus 0.94. U.S. Bank, so they beat on EPS and revenue. They are, what's their ticker? US Bank? Oh, USB. They are up 4%. There you go. Robinhood's now green, 24.69. Robinhood is now green, 24.70. So the banks, again, the banks are doing well. They're even if their stocks are not always reflecting it immediately because some of the stocks have had a good year, they're doing well. They're doing really well. And so USB getting up 4.34% is really nice to see. Robinhood 24.72. SoFi 791. SoFi 791. Honest is going up. Honest, wow, 14%. I'm going to try to see if there's any news on Honest. I don't think there is. Maybe there is. Again, it might just be small caps going up, but maybe they put out something. They didn't have earnings today. I don't know. They didn't have earnings. I don't see anything right now as I search. If anyone knows anything about Honest, let me know. It could just be small caps going up and markets getting ready for their earnings. But they are benefiting right now as IWM goes up as well. It might just be because of IWM. And IWM, SoFi 791, small caps right here, they are 0.75% up. So they got 0.25% to go to be up full 1% on the day. And as we say that, NVIDIA is down 4.28%. Wow. NVIDIA, there's no green candles on NVIDIA. It's not trying to get down only 2% or 3%. Money might end up leaving for small caps. Obese Tomato, thank you for the $10 super chat. I appreciate that. Will be interesting to see what TSM does throughout the day with earnings tomorrow. TSM is earnings tomorrow? Are you? Oh shit, you're right. Holy crap! In the morning, TSM. So TSM and Domino's have earnings tomorrow. Wow. Let's do some real life due diligence. When's the last time people in the chat had Domino's? When's the last time in the chat people had Domino's? When's the last time you had it? Robinhood now 24.59. So just went red. And the reason it just went red is because Bitcoin slightly went red. Bitcoin was at 65.3. Now it's at 65.1. But the Bitcoin holding 65 would just be super, super awesome. And obviously going higher would be good. Trump will be speaking at the Bitcoin rally in a couple weeks. And again, that Mark Andreessen podcast, I really recommend people listen to it. Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz. Again, I'm going to put in the chat right now. These two guys are tech billionaires, VCs. They're voting for Trump. And the way they describe the policy reasons, they don't care about the social stuff, the policy reasons for why they're voting Trump, I thought it just gives a little bit more insight into why Silicon Valley is turning. And so, if Trump is bullish for Bitcoin, we'll obviously see how it plays out as well. So Domino's, wow, 10 years ago, you guys don't like pizza or something? What is going on? 5 years ago, a year ago, last year, it's gross. There's something wrong with their cheese. So I agree with you. Their pizza is not as good as Papa John's. 1000%. Papa John's is better pizza. But I would expect more people to be eating Domino's. Domino's is a big brand, dude. I mean, Domino's, also their stock has done great over the past couple of years. Domino's right here, 486, down 0.73% on the day. USB again, up 4%. Great earnings for them. And then Robinhood, 24.64 on the day. All right, let's go to CNBC. Let's get some coverage from there. And then we'll keep going and see how this rotation potentially ends up playing out. Wait, Palantir is green? Did Palantir go green? Palantir. Wow, folks. Holy crap. Oh my God. If we make a run for 29 again, dude. If we make a run for 29 Dolores, let's go to the order flow and let's see where the resistance is for our good friend Palantir. Okay, the resistance for Palantir is definitely at 29. At $29, there is 103,000 shares, bro. All right, I got to call up Derek. I got to call up Derek or Vlad, one of them. I'll be like, hey, can I have a favor? Can you guys do me a favor? By the way, I don't know if you guys, I didn't get to talk about the tweet on Monday, but I put out this tweet. So Derek and Vlad are, Vlad, for those that don't know, he's the guy who's Derek's friend. Derek, you guys all know. He came on the channel and he bought 50,000 shares of Palantir at $27.84. Again, these guys have a little bit more than fuck you money. So I put out this tweet on Friday or Saturday. They invited me to Miami to go on a private jet with them from Miami to California because they're visiting some investment opportunities, whatever. They're getting a tour of some factories or something. And so they're like, yo, do you want to come? And I was like, sure, this is a great opportunity. I've never been on a private jet before. I thought this would be really cool to get on a private jet. And so they mentioned to me a couple days ago, and then they text back like Saturday at 10 p.m. And they're like, hey, you're confirmed. Make sure you're in Miami on October 16th, and we're good to go. And then they said, let's make a whole weekend out of it, right? Let's have fun. Let's go out. Let's like do something. We'll be on a private jet. It'll be fun. And I was like, wow, so this would be like my first experience on like a private jet with like literal billionaires flying across the country. And then I realized, wait a second. So I said, yes, I confirmed. I'm like, yes, I'll be there. Thank you guys for the opportunity. This is awesome. And then I realized, holy fuck, I'm going to be in India in all of October. And so I call my mom and I'm like, Mom, what are the dates for October or for India? And she's like, October 5th to October 21st. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to tell 2 billionaires I am rejecting a flight with them because I'm going to be in India. And I know a lot of people are mad at me. They're like, dude, forget India, go later. I get it. There's too many family reasons I can't reschedule, unfortunately. And so I text in the group chat. I'm like, hey guys, I can't make it. And so Derek, me and Derek are much closer. Derek's just like, dude, it's okay. You'll be fine. Like we'll try to do it another time. Vlad, he says he texts the YouTube link for the E40 song Choices. And he says, well, everybody got choices. And it was the most gangster thing ever, dude. He was just like, either, this is your choice. Either you come with us or you go to India. And it's a real thing. So he was just like, you got to kind of pick your poison right here. Robinhood 24.70. And so I'm picking India. I haven't been to India in 5 years. I got to see my grandma. She's getting old. So I don't want to rush that trip or anything, I really love India. You guys know how much I deeply want to go back to India. It's just that conflict sucks, dude. That conflict sucks so much. IWM, where's IWM? Wow. Well, no, we got a red candle. I thought we were up 1%. Now we're down. So we're up 0.37%. We were up 0.7. Palantir still going green at 28.70. But IWM now. A little red candle, but it's still green for the day. So yeah, I ended up having to reject it. And it sucked. It would have been so fun, dude. Even the YouTube video of being in a private jet, like that would be so cool. Now, a lot of you that are OG members of the channel, you guys know that I said a year ago, I think I said this on Finance Junkies, I will never fly private or first class in my life. And the reason I said that is because I thought that if I fly private, as a lot of you guys are making all these jokes in the chat, you basically lose your soul, right? Oh, shout out to my uncle. Shout out to my dude. My uncle's in the chat. Munish, yo, that's crazy. Shout out to you, Manu Mama. I call him Manu Mama. Munish Munjal. For those that don't know, this is my mom's brother. Wow, he was lurking in the chat. Shout out to you. It's okay. We'll make your India trip eventful. Shout out to you, Manu Mama. Oh, wow. That's awesome. He's usually never in the chat. He's here in the chat. Shout out to him. So yeah, that's another reason I like going to India is because my uncle, which is my mom's brother, me and him like have a hell of a good time, right? Last time he basically taught me how to drink in 2019. So that's another reason I want to go to India, right? It's just like all my family is really there. But the point is having to reject it was tough. It's just at the end of the day, like family is what really matters. So when I said I would never fly private a year ago, the entire concept was I'm going to lose my soul if I fly private. And I realized when I got the opportunity 2 weeks ago, that was bullshit. Because once you get the opportunity, I mean, everything changes. And it's like, I think this is part of maturing and growing older. And I had to be a little introspective here because not for 1 second, I mean, not for one fucking second did I think I would reject that opportunity if I had the scheduling ability to not reject that opportunity. Robin right here, 2457, SoFi 783. Not for 1 second did I think, oh my God, I'm going to lose my soul. I'm going to be in a private jet. Like, no, dude, I was like, how the fuck can I confirm that I want to be in Miami ASAP? And so I really had to gut check myself. It's like, yo, all that virtue signaling shit I said a year ago about, oh, I don't want to be on a private jet because, I want to be humble. I want to fly 32F. It's like, no, motherfucker, I want to fly first class. I don't want to be interrupted. I want to have a shrimp and red wine. And I want the air travel lady. What do you call them? The attendant. I want her to be super nice to me because I paid a lot of money. Like I want the luxuries of life. And I don't think anyone should complain about that. I don't think anyone should complain about that. And the reason no one should complain about that, and this is what I wrote on Twitter, is because I didn't come from wealth. I'm not coming from my dad who flew me on private jets ever since I was a kid. If I got that opportunity, it's because I fucking worked for it, right? Obviously, there's a little luck involved, but still, I worked my ass off for that opportunity. So I think if you work your ass off for something, you deserve to enjoy it versus feeling like you need to be humble because you're selling your soul because you're getting too rich. It's like, nah, dude, you got to enjoy some of the luxuries of life. Okay, as I say that, the people who have the luxury of having an NVIDIA average at 118, your luxury is about to be gone. NVIDIA down 6%. That 118 average that was looking cute is not looking cute anymore. NVIDIA's down 6%, and IWM, although it's down, although it's not up as much as it's up, it is still green. Now, if IWM goes 1% up or even 2% up and NVIDIA goes down, that would be really exciting. But NVIDIA down 6%, IWM up 0.35%. What a rotation, man. What a freaking rotation. This is pretty incredible. Do you sell NVIDIA puts right here? Well, let's look at the premiums. Let's look at the premiums on NVIDIA. Let's look at this shit. So I think TJ sold some 118 puts already. So those are starting to get in the money if we end up having to exercise those. So let's look at the NVIDIA puts right now. Sell put. Let's go August 16th. That's still a week before their earnings. NVIDIA puts. All right. So NVIDIA stock is currently 118. So if by August 16th you are comfortable buying NVIDIA at around 110, market's giving you about $310 per contract. Wow, 68,000 open interest on the 110 put. Goodness gracious. If you're comfortable buying it at 100, market's still giving you $100, which is not horrible. 120,000 open interest. Seems like people are bearish NVIDIA, dude. Goodness great. That's a lot of puts. Holy, maybe earnings are before this, and that's why it's so many. But I don't think earnings are. I think earnings are on the third week of August, not the second week. If you want to get a little bit more aggressive and you're willing to buy NVIDIA at 115 on August 16th, market will give you $480. If we do another expiration, let's do August 9th. Same 115, market will give you about $400. Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to, is NVIDIA a good deal at 115? See, this is the hard part about the markets, right? Like when at 140, it's like, oh, at 115, NVIDIA is a great deal. Now it's like, well, at 118, is NVIDIA a good deal? And IWM's about to go red. IWM's giving up all of its gains. Wow. Okay, so now here's the reverse card. What if IWM goes red and NVIDIA goes green? That would be a Uno reverse of the century. I mean, or at least of not the century, of July 17th. If IWM went 1% red or green, then goes zero, then goes red. IWM officially red. And that money goes in. See, here's the thing. What if NVIDIA got so cheap at 118, now it's at 119, that the market said, screw IWM, and they sold their IWM that they bought this morning, and then they bought NVIDIA at 118. That's a realistic thing that could be happening. It would just be crazy to see if that's happening, because it means the market is not like leaving their NVIDIA obsession at the end of the day. SPY 558. Yeah, so the S&P is taking a little bit of a tumble. Bitcoin, where's Bitcoin? Bitcoin 64.7. That means Robinhood is probably 24.30. Robinhood 24.28. SoFi still being green though. SoFi still green. It's up 0.51%. S&P has not gone red 2% in a long time. It's down 1.1%. So let's see if that dip gets eaten up or if S&P goes a little red. QQQ down 2.2%. Yeah, QQQ taking a hit. Tech is down 485. Short QQQ, if you bought that yesterday, you are up 7%. So SQQQ has done well today, even if QQQ hasn't done well. June says if NVIDIA hits 100, I'm buying more. Meta's down 4%. Okay, so what's the price target that people have in the chat for NVIDIA? What's the price target you have for NVIDIA? If NVIDIA goes down to 100, or NVIDIA goes what price do you say, all right, I'm buying at least 50 shares of NVIDIA? Adam says the girl at the bar just revealed she has herpes. New price target 115. Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. Let's see, dude. Let's see. What if only the KRE sector goes up? No, regional banks are not going to go up and small caps don't go up. I mean, I would find that hard to believe, but regionals definitely are undervalued. So they will, have momentum. But if regionals go up, IWM should go up because IWM has a ton of KRE. So we should see the broadening take place across all of them. Okay, price targets. We have 90. Okay, Josh is being funny. $25. Be realistic, dude. Be like don't just be bearish to be bearish. Like, what realistically does NVIDIA have to go to for you guys to get excited? Like for me, NVIDIA gets to 95, I get excited. I don't think I'm gonna get that, but if it gets to 95, I feel like all right, like it's like that's 950 post split or pre-split. Like I feel like that's somewhat reasonable at $95. That would mean their PE goes from 48 closer to, I think at 95 it goes to like 39, which given the growth is still going to be triple digits in next quarter or 90% next year, it still seems reasonable, right? So 95 to me is where I get a little bit more excited. 95 to 100 is big support. Yeah, and 95 to 100 is also very big support. See how crazy the market is, dude? Things start going down, and then we're like, oh, well, I would love to have NVIDIA at this price. Like, when the market goes up, it's like, well, imagine if NVIDIA gets to 150, I'm going to be so rich. Then the market goes down. It's like, man, dude, imagine if NVIDIA goes to 80, I'll buy the dip. It's like, there's such big swings in between how market psychology ends up working as well. All right, let's get some coverage on CNBC, and then we'll keep going from there.
Plan to be able to open.
So just a head start on reshoring?
Yes. And if you look at John Ford, I mean, he's done some great reporting on what Intel's doing. They're putting up factories here, and that is not what NVIDIA's doing. But what is NVIDIA going to do? I mean, you can't make this stuff here right now. Now, Intel being up 3 there's typical overreaction, because then you're going to get the quarter Intel, and you're going to say, why did I buy it up 3? Oh, yeah, right. It was some foundry. But that's what people are doing. That's a panic short. And I just say, look, go ahead and do it, but understand it's a trade, because Intel will not make the quarter.
Right. You see some headlines out of Waller here, getting closer to the time when a rate cut is appropriate. More evidence that first half data was an aberration. Cutting too soon would be a grave mistake. You did have Williams this morning as well in the Journal, basically closing the door on July, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think July was just a Goldman canard, and I enjoy Goldman's research. But that was just something that I think that was ill-advised.
Goldman did say July rate cut is possible. They put that out yesterday. So probably not going to happen, but Goldman did say it is possible.
That piece, I think everyone expects, if you read bank after bank after bankers. Look, Brian Moynihan yesterday. They've got a schedule for what they think, and I think that everyone's being September, 100%, and then we'll see what happens. That's not wrong.
Jim, I want to get your take on J&J, which we haven't hit at all this morning. The stock is up about 1.8%, still down for the year. Well, obviously, no longer even close to the level it once had of being the largest market cap pharma / whatever you want, devices company now. I mean, Eli Lilly's double its size. That said, 2024 second quarter sales growth 4.3%. Growth of 6.6%, adjusted operational growth of 6.5%, excuse me, as well.
Well,
Thoughts?
okay, there was a lot of misinterpretation of the quarter because there's some different accounting issues when it comes to what they bought, M&A.
Yep.
Joe Wall explained it to me really classically, which is that if people understood the accounting, you realize it's not a miss at all. And that is driving the stock. Plus, they are, July 26th, you're going to see the closing of the vote on talc. And they may have enough votes to stop talc litigation, which would be amazing. Remember, no plaintiff has won since 2018.
The vote is the
closure on because the courts, I think, are
accepting the
prepackaged,
right,
and I
for
think
the litigation that around the talc that says that it's a carcinogen.
And that makes you feel like, well, maybe the stock's too undervalued. They do have a.
Okay, we'll get back to that in a second. Markets are going red right now. NVIDIA really taking a hit right here, down 6%. Everything's red now. S&P is down 1.16. If we get to 1.5 down on the S&P, that'll be the first time I think we've even seen 1.5 in months. Again, S&P has just been on an incredible run. We have not had a 2% red day in a year. Maybe today is that day. Someone said maybe August, September sucks and then buy again in November. That is potentially something that could happen. Q2 earnings is really going to determine a lot of this. The way that I think the market could be green in certain sectors, but not other sectors, even though August and September suck, is if Bitcoin goes up. So all the Bitcoin proxies potentially, like if Bitcoin goes to 90,000, in September, historically when the stock market is bad, Coinbase is not going to be at 230. Like Coinbase is going to 350, right? Like Coinbase is going up. So same thing with MicroStrategy, CleanSpark, et cetera, Robinhood. So a lot of those companies I think will benefit if Bitcoin goes up. But the question is, can Bitcoin get to 90 grand, 100 grand if the broader growth risk assets like NVIDIA aren't pumping? And I don't know. I don't know if a Trump speech is enough to do that. I don't know if a rate cut is enough to do that. We're going to have to see. But yes, August and September historically are bad. And they were tough last year as well. The question is going to be, can certain sectors get through that, even if the broader market takes a little bit of a hit, right? Could Bitcoin be one of the companies that ends up playing that out? So I guess we'll see, but that is one thing that might end up being what we see. Let's get back to some headlines. IWM and then Ray Dalio as well was on the show today. We'll hear what he has to say.
Geopolitical concerns fueled by comments from former President Trump and also reports of tighter export restrictions from the Biden administration from China. More on the chips and what these policies look like later this hour. But guys, overall, it's been kind of a rally moment. And it's hard not to pay attention to the small caps and the rally that they have staged. The Russell 2000, ever since that good CPI number that we got, I don't know, just a week or so ago. Look at the outperformance of the small caps, the Russell 2000 against the NASDAQ 100, which is all the big tech stocks, of course. An outperformance of 11%. And that's something we haven't seen since
standard deviation.
2011.
That's what I'm hearing from some of my hedge fund guys, which doesn't happen very often.
The question is why?
Yeah. I mean, lower rates obviously is seen as the key here in terms of beneficial, and then this trade has just sort of picked up steam as it's gone along. This is a historic rotation,
violent rotation,
given how quickly it's occurred. Yeah,
and the question is, what's priced in? So lower rates, yes, people are getting very excited and confident about that, and also the Trump trade. Medley Advisors, a note this morning, the Trump trade 2.0, they say, is long industrial, small caps, and mid caps. And then there was this chart from Goldman Sachs trading note this morning that looked at simple S&P 500 versus the predicted odds that Trump will win the election. And they show that that's given an extra boost.
Wow. I have never seen this chart before. So the predictive odds that Trump wins is almost identical to the past month's run in the S&P. It's pretty interesting.
At least it's correlated with this extra boost. It's happening at the same time where inflation numbers are more benign. We're looking forward to some Fed cuts, but also this idea that the Trump economy and a Republican sweep, it would be good. It would be pro-business, lower corporate tax rates, for instance,
lower
deregulation.
Corporate tax rates, although, the pro-business part has become more interesting, particularly with
tariffs.
But, J.D. Vance, whether he has any influence, of course, in the actual administration will be interesting to see. But
on antitrust, you mean?
Antitrust, devaluing the dollar. banking regulations,
minimum wage,
any number of things that I think would be viewed, Sarah, more as not necessarily as pro-business, at least the way we think of the Republican Party in the past.
Right.
Not to mention, of course, the 10% tariff that former President Trump has discussed as something he would implement, which I'll let you tell me what the impact of that would be.
Well, tariffs are not growth friendly, bottom line, but they have a worse impact on Europe, on China, on our trading partners. And that's why there's a little bit of a weakness trade in the dollar going on right now, just because there's a view that President Trump favors a weaker dollar, will put pressure on the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates, and also put pressure on some of our trading partners. You know, we talked to Ray Dalio about some of this yesterday. Obviously, he's been writing a lot and thinking a lot in his historical framework about the internal conflict going on with politics. And here's what he said he expects from another Trump administration.
You're going to have a more isolationist, nationalist policies that are going to be less regulatory, more capitalist. Those things, by and large, are better for the capital markets. You're probably going to have pressure for an easier monetary policy. And so we're also going to have greater amounts of deficits and so on.
And that's something that he's very worried about in the long run. Biggest investor takeaway from him, I thought, and this has been kind of a common refrain from him, which is gold has a very important role to play in the portfolio, given policy uncertainty and debt problems. And he prefers gold to Bitcoin, although he said he owns some Bitcoin. A lot of love for Bitcoin lately. And then, you know, diversification and the important role of that. And the fact that he's just not a fan of bonds here, even though there has been appetite for U.S. Treasuries just on this idea that deficits will rise no matter what.
All right. So you heard from Ray Dalio. Now, Ray Dalio is a China fan, so it's going to be interesting to see how he thinks of a Trump presidency. If you read kind of his concept of the New World Order, he does think it's a little bit more in line with the CCP values than we think. Even though obviously he's a huge capitalist. So it'll be interesting how Trump potentially impacts his worldview. NVIDIA is still down 5.74%, S&P 559, recovering a little bit right here. Robinhood 2456, that one getting back up of these green candle. I think Robinhood now is primarily moving with Bitcoin. It's pretty obvious when Bitcoin takes a 2% dump, Robinhood goes down, 10, 15 points, Bitcoin goes up, Robinhood goes up. So really it's based on Bitcoin, and as they have a good Q2 earnings, that should put them into a different level. And then if Bitcoin goes up, that's just only going to help them even more. Palantir 2848, Honest still up 12%, USB up 4.25%, SoFi 777 on the day. Taiwan now down almost 7%, 6.86% down on the day. Couple of headlines I want to give you guys. So first of all, here is okay, let me pull this right here. So in terms of NVIDIA, so here's a headline right now about what's going on with NVIDIA and China. Google and Microsoft are helping Chinese firms skirt the ban on NVIDIA chips. Companies in China can still gain access to some of those chips by renting NVIDIA-powered servers at data centers outside China from Google, Microsoft, and other firms. And this is what a lot of people felt, that when the US banned China from being able to buy NVIDIA chips, NVIDIA would just sell them to Singapore or other parts in Asia. And those people would just send them over to China, right? Because once you sell it to Singapore, the American government has no influence on what the Singapore government, has in relationship to China. So it makes sense that Google and Microsoft, in order to grow, are renting out their GPU servers for other companies to be able to get some benefit. This is not the best for NVIDIA. I mean, technically it's a wash, because if Google and Microsoft have to buy more NVIDIA chips, then NVIDIA is just going to get more revenue. But obviously, NVIDIA is not going to be able to directly sell those chips, which will probably be high margin for them over Google and Microsoft being able to have access and kind of like doing it through a middleman. So that's one thing to take in the context of NVIDIA. I don't think that's why NVIDIA is down today, but that's one thing to at least think about. Number two is Barclay raised their price target on Tesla to 225, up from 180, maintaining its equal weight rating. So now we got a 247 price target. We got a 275 target. A 250 target, Dan Ives with a $400 target, and then a 225 target. So we've seen a lot of those targets that were in the 140s, 180s get into the 200s. They're not all into the 270s, 280s, but they still are up there and continuing to maintain more momentum for Tesla. Chris has got to run. Thank you for being here, Chris. Appreciate it. Okay, so the other thing about Tesla that's really interesting. Here is a picture. This was pretty funny that that Donald Trump posted on Truth Social a long time ago. So Trump's basically said Elon will get on my knees if I tell him to do anything. And he put a picture of him and Elon. This was before Elon came and started to support him. Okay. So Gavin Newsom quote tweets it and he says, "You bent the knee," obviously because Elon now is an avid supporter of Trump. Elon responds, "You never get off your knees." And so this was just a hilarious thing to see this morning in terms of how this is playing out. Because look, I don't blame Elon for getting on his knees here. He has a lot of shareholders that he needs to make sure he's friendly with, the guy in the White House, to make sure that shareholder value continues to accumulate. So if you're a shareholder of Tesla, SpaceX, et cetera, you definitely want Elon to get on his knees when it comes to Trump, because that's just what you have to do. But Elon saying right here, "You never get off your knees," to Gavin, basically saying, Gavin, all you do is beg for money. You don't really have any backbone, right? You don't do anything. You don't build anything. That's kind of the exchange that's happening there. It's going to show it just goes to show the fundamental divide between Elon and the political class, and his vitriol, not only for California, because he's leaving California as of yesterday, but also for politicians that aren't really addressing his agenda. Remember, Biden did not invite him to the first EV summit back in 2022, or I think it was late 2021. Elon was pissed off about that. I mean, Elon, it's just you can't be the guy who created EVs and not get an invite from the White House. And so I think that pissing off of Elon was not good. And then we saw with Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz deciding to endorse Trump, big tech or startups getting rejected essentially by the White House the same way he rejected Elon, in the context of, we're not going to give you crypto regulation, we're not going to give you AI stuff. They also are now going to Trump. And so it's just very interesting kind of how the market has turned. And this is kind of what we're seeing from the political class and in the context of Elon. Here's Doug Leone. Again, he is the partner at Sequoia Capital. This is what he put out on Twitter as well. This is on June 3rd. "I have become increasingly concerned about the general direction of our country, the state of our broken immigration system, the ballooning deficit, and the foreign policy missteps, among other issues. Therefore, I am supporting former President Trump in this coming election." Again, this is a guy who is the guy when it comes to clean energy. Doug Leone, if you watch any interview of what he talks about, he is so pro-nuclear, pro-solar, etc. For him to abandon all of that because of other issues he thinks are more important and vote for Trump, it's just surprising, dude. It's just really surprising, the tone shift we're seeing in the broader valley. And so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this plays out. All right, let's look at big tech. Let's look at the Mag 7. What do we got on the Mag 7 right now? They're still in pain. Tesla's down 2%, Nvidia's down 5%, Amazon's down 3%, Google's down 1.3%, Meta's down 3.6%, Microsoft down 1.7%, Apple down 2.8%. All of this, in my opinion, still relatively healthy. They're all up a lot. They're all up a lot for July. I think we also have to remember that. I mean, let's do that right now. How much are these guys up month to date? So over the past month, Apple is still up 5%, even though it's down today. Google is up 2%, even though it's down today. Nvidia over the past month is down 10%. So Nvidia actually did take a hit. Amazon in July is up 2%. And then Meta should be up more. Yeah. Well, no, Meta's down 7% in the past month. It was up 10% in the past 5 days, but since June 17th, it's down. And then Microsoft for the past month is down 2%. All right. So for the past month, they're all taking a little bit of a hit. But obviously for the full year, they've all done very well. Robinhood 2458, Bitfarms 2985, Bitcoin 648, and then Ethereum here at 3400 on the day. Let me pull up that clip of Vlad talking. It's about a 2-minute clip about crypto at the Fortune conference yesterday. I'm going to try to find the full interview, but I don't have it yet. But here's 2 minutes. Oh, before that, let me show you quick. JD Vance, the potential new vice president of the United States. Here's his thoughts on Elon Musk.
Look, Elon and I know each other a little bit, but Elon is actually a great example of an American entrepreneur who's built a company, but also a company that's employed a lot of good American workers. If you think about, Elon Musk is in some ways a throwback to an older generation of American entrepreneur. He builds real things. He builds cars. He builds rockets, and that's I think the kind of economy that President Trump wants to create. So, look, Elon.
Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have never said in those 20 seconds what JD Vance just said about Elon. like this guy who builds companies, rockets, like they just don't say that stuff. And so I think even that is another reason Elon's happy. It's like someone actually supports him in the White House, which makes sense why he's supporting them. Also, before the Vlad clip, another headline I want to show you guys. So John Deere is getting rid of their DEI initiatives. Look at what they say right here. For example, last year, we revised our corporate guidelines to solely focus on sponsorship, supporting the business and the brand, and we focused on core areas, hunger, economic development, agriculture, etc. Based on ongoing conversations, we have committed to the following. We will no longer participate in our support for external social or cultural awareness parades, festivals, or events, which means on Pride Month, John Deere is not going to actively support the pride parades that are going on in whatever states that John Deere operates in, which historically they have done. On top of that, Microsoft came out yesterday. They have fired their entire internal diversity, equity, and inclusion team. So it's really interesting, dude. This entire idea, obviously, Trump is very anti-DEI. Biden is pro-DEI. You got the Silicon Valley billionaires going the Trump direction, and then you got the companies. I know John Deere is not a tech company, but still, you got the companies thinking, wait a second, we don't want this DEI anymore. If Trump gets into office, he would give the green light to every company to not care about DEI. Whether you think that's good or bad, that's up for debate. But that is the tone shift we're having in the broader business cycle. And it's going to be very, very interesting, again, to see how that actually implicates jobs and where people want to work. And how I'm sure there's a lot of people at Microsoft that were not happy that Microsoft got rid of its DEI team, but ultimately those decisions are being made. Okay, here's Vlad talking about blockchain and crypto yesterday at the Fortune conference.
Become the place that all the millennials are putting all their money in the future?
Yeah, I'll start with crypto. I think when a lot of people hear crypto, they sort of like gravitate towards meme coins and speculation. And I think there's a part of the crypto markets that's certainly, and it draws a lot of attention. But I think what we have the benefit of seeing, because we sort of like have both of these businesses, right? And we can see them side by side, and we now can look at crypto in the EU, brokerage in the UK as well, is the cost of running a crypto business is like an order of magnitude lower, because you get to leverage so much of the public infrastructure, and these public blockchains do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to settlement and transactions, that there's just like a obvious technology advantage in putting more and more stuff on that infrastructure. It's kind of like going from mainframes to on-premise to cloud. I think the next transition for financial services will be more and more of these things are going to go on blockchains, and more of what we consider kind of traditional financial products will be traded and custodied on blockchains as well. And you can, to some degree, see this with dollar stablecoins overseas. The bulk of transaction volume on crypto rails is dollar stablecoin right now. And the reason is overseas, people want dollars, and the easiest and most straightforward way to get them is through some of these stablecoin products. And you don't have to squint too hard to imagine a world where stocks are on blockchains and are tokenized. Other assets like fixed income are there as well. And there's like a view of crypto as a technology layer that's going to be really accelerated once people understand that there's just like a huge efficiency advantage. And so I think that's interesting. I think that'll become increasingly clear, and Robinhood can be a leader there. And
TLDR, that's why they bought Bitstamps. Basically, if you didn't get what Vlad is saying there, he's saying, look, everyone thinks it's about Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's about the blockchain. And the blockchain technology, which Bitcoin and Ethereum are some of the most important parts of that overall ecosystem, that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at an entirely decentralized ecosystem and infrastructure that makes trading assets, not just cryptocurrencies, but overall assets, tokenized assets, which is what Larry Fink is talking about in terms of what he wants to do by privatizing fixed income, privatizing real estate, et cetera, in a way that's efficient, that's safe, and that allows more liquidity in the capital markets. And so the reason they bought Bitstamp, it's not because they want more people to trade Bitcoin. Like, yeah, that'll be a good benefit. But their argument is, hey, if we have a crypto license in 50 different countries, now when we really build out the blockchain infrastructure so that when people are trading, pieces of real estate on the blockchain, which seems like in the next 5 to 10 years, that is going to inevitably happen as the tokenization of all assets ends up becoming real. then who are the major players there? Is Schwab a major player there? Is Fidelity a major player there? Or is Robinhood and Coinbase the major players? And I think from that perspective, this is why I think they are just on the right track. They're innovative. They're seeing beyond the horizon. They're looking at what they can really do to build out the next generation of financial services. And that's why I think Robinhood is going to do what they have to do. So good stuff from Robinhood, and it makes sense in terms of what he's ultimately trying to accomplish there. And as you guys are saying, he looks very swole. He's eating some medium well steaks. That's what he's doing. So is it Visa and MasterCard, right? Visa and MasterCard would have to kind of change how they think about tokenized assets if they become the payment toll booth for those types of assets. But maybe it's not Visa and MasterCard. That interview and what Vlad talked about, I'm going to try to get the full interview, but he looks pretty confident, dude. He looks like they crushed Q2 earnings, and he looks ready to keep this thing going and keep doing what he has to do. So I think that was a good interview and a good way to see Vlad before going into Q2 earnings. Okay, we're going to end it with one final clip, guys. I'm going to play you guys the part of the podcast that I keep telling everyone to listen to, where they talk about unrealized capital gains tax, because I thought this was so insightful going deep into this part. I think it's like 5-6 minutes. If you're interested, you can stay around. If not, then that's the end of the market close. But here's where they officially decided they're going to endorse Trump. It's because of this one particular policy the Biden administration is proposing. And here's how people who are pretty successful think about that policy and what it means for the broader U.S. economy.
There's a proposal in the budget for next year for the second term, and the proposal is for a change to the tax structure to tax unrealized capital gains. And this sounds esoteric, but this ends up being very important. And so what this means is that anybody, and I'm going to start by saying, it comes out of the gate marketed as a billionaire's tax.
Isn't this just about rich people?
Isn't this just about rich people? So the first thing that happens is you read the document that describes it. It doesn't just apply to billionaires. So like right out of the gate.
It's always marketed as billionaires.
Right out of the gate, they're lying about what it is. And it's just black and white in the document. That's just like a flat out lie. And so it's not a billionaire's tax. So it is a threshold of $100 million. That is obviously a lot of money. I'm going to come back to why that's important, though, in a few minutes. But for anybody in that category, what you're going to be required to do is you're going to be required to pay an annual tax on unrealized capital gains. And so if you own a building, if you own a business, and here specifically we're talking about tech startups, which is our space. If you're the founder of a tech startup and the value of your stake in that startup exceeds the threshold that they set, or if you're a venture capital firm and you have a fund that has an aggregated pool of such things and the value exceeds that, you have to start paying, and you have to pay annual tax on the unrealized gain. Now, the thing is, the IRS only takes, they don't take private stock or a share in a building as tax payment. They only take,
you have to somehow get the money.
US dollars. They only take US dollars. And so you have to figure out a way to get US dollars against an unrealized gain in an illiquid asset. Right. And so first of all, like, where are you going to get
the good news is, housing prices and building prices never go down.
They only ever go up.
And for sure, startups never go up and down. They're never overvalued. There's no bubbles.
Oh, so you'll love this. So in the black and white, you'll love this part. In the black and white of the tax proposal, what they say is that the valuation of the startup for the purpose of calculating the gain is the greater of a number of options, but specifically the last round valuation. And so everybody in the world who likes to go on and on about how startups are always overvalued at every round,
and often they are, and that's kind of why it's a risky business.
So there is the issue of there is the issue of paying tax against something where you're never actually going to come out the other and realizing it, because sometimes these things go great and then they don't. So there is that issue. We'll also come back to that one. But there's a more fundamental thing, which is every year, if you're a startup founder, a significant percent, they're proposing out of the gate, I think it's like a 25% tax. I should look it up. Let's see. Let's see, 25% tax. So minimum tax of 25%. On day one. And we'll talk about what happens to tax rates over time. It starts at 25%. So every year, 25% of your gain gets stripped away. And so basically you're working and your team is working, everything is working. And, these companies, the founders, you want them to have big ownership.
Well, your unrealized gains. It's 25% of the markup in valuation that you do not have the money for.
Every year. And so what's happening is you're getting strips of your equity stripped away from you every year. If you're a venture firm, you're getting strips of your portfolio pulled away from you every year.
Which isn't actually plausible.
25% annual unrealized gains tax every year for 10 years.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah, you're out of business.
You're out of business.
Yeah, for the new company and for the funder of the new company
and for the VC,
sure.
you lose your equity stake.
Yeah,
it gets systematically stripped away from you. You lose it. It gets whittled down to nothing.
Yeah.
This makes startups completely implausible.
Yeah.
Because why on earth is anybody going to go do this instead of going to work for Google and getting paid a lot of money every year in cash? Why is anybody going to put themselves through this in order to have all their equity get taken away? Number one, and then number two, venture capital just ends.
Yeah,
it's just over. Like firms like ours just like don't exist.
Gone,
They're gone because the structure doesn't work.
Well, actually, we had experience with something kind of similar. So in the you remember the .com bubble?
I do. Alleged bubble.
Yeah, alleged bubble. There were the .com. Having been CEO there, it was at least a very violent time in the stock market.
Yes.
And one of the things, so Cisco, which was probably the most stable, like monotonically increasing company in the industry, a lot of the employees did something called exercise their option to convert them to capital gains. And when you do that, you're subject to something called the alternative minimum tax. And, basically you owe a tax on the difference between the fair value and the price that you exercised at. And then the market crashed. So they could not sell their stock to pay their taxes because the price of Cisco fell below what they paid for. So they didn't have the money. And there were literally tow trucks in the Cisco parking lot repossessing employees' cars. So we know
people who lost their homes.
Yeah. And then people, of course, lost their homes and everything else. And so it just doesn't it makes it not plausible to start a company. And it's very obvious and it's a known fact and all these things. And so it was really surprising that this would be a formal proposal. And something that, by the way, Biden's been campaigning on, when he says, I'm going to get the fair share from billionaires. He's really talking about the unrealized gain. That's the form of that promise.
That's the thing. And so here's what happens. So number one, you just kill startups and you just kill venture capital. So congratulations.
Yeah, you kill the technology industry.
Good job. Number one.
Yeah.
By the way, number two, you kill the California tax base.
Oh yeah, California is done.
California is done. And I'll just give you an example or give the audience an example why California is done. So at the peak years of capital gains realization for the high tech industry in California.
This is the part where it affects everyone, not just people who make $100 million.
California at the peak years, and we just had one of those peak years actually in I think 2021.
Yeah.
In the peak years, up to half of total tax receipts for the state of California come from the top 1,000 individual taxpayers.
Yeah.
Which is basically all tech.
Yeah.
And so if you eliminate high tech in California, if you eliminate startups, you eliminate venture capital, you eliminate at least half of the California tax base.
Yeah.
And the California tax base, you take away half the funding.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, over 60% goes to schools. So it's just total destruction.
It's total destruction.
Yeah.
And, look, California has a giant population, including, many people who, don't pay tax, many people who are, very low income, and every support network, everything that basically takes care of those people just gets completely obliterated. And so it's like a direct strike in California.
Seems like a bad idea.
This seems like a very bad idea. I'm not done with the extent to which it's a bad idea though.
Yeah.
Number three, the issue that you brought up, which is you end up paying tax on things that don't realize. Then there's the issue of how much are you taking on debt, just all kinds of crazy issues. Are you allowed to sell your stock in a company that's not public yet? At what point does the SEC come after you for that? I mean, it's just that part's all bonkers. But then there's what happens next, which is, there's a long history here of what happens in taxes in the United States, which is what happens is, when the income tax started, it wasn't a 30 or 40% tax. It was like a 3% tax. And what happens is, basically, once the structure gets established, the politicians do what they do, which is they walk the numbers up.
Yeah.
And so what's going to happen, number one, is if this starts at a 25% annual unrealized capital gains tax, it's not going to stay at 25%. It's going to walk up, number one, especially because it's going to be destruction in the tax base. So they're going to need to tax the remaining taxpayers more.
Because there's not enough top line.
Not enough top line revenue anymore, which is sort of a very predictable thing.
Presto changeo, we're Argentina.
I mean, this is just absolutely
pretty scary,
absolutely destructive. And then the other thing that happens is, I mentioned, they're marketing as a billionaire's tax, which is high. It's $100 million, and a lot of people are going to say, look, I'm never going to be in that category, but it doesn't stay at $100 million because there aren't enough people at $100 million. So what they're going to do is they're inevitably going to walk that number down
because you run out of money. Well, it's like the kulaks, right?
What's that?
It's so Well, when the Bolshevik Revolution happened, the first thing, Lenin's first idea was kill all the rich people.
Right.
But you run out of rich people pretty fast, it turns out, particularly if you're killing them, and, there's no more money. So he ended up killing the kulaks, who were the farmers with 2 horses, 2 cows, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because, you need more people to kill, clearly, so you can seize more stuff.
Yeah. The dividing line at the end was
Yeah.
it was whether you own 1 cow or 2 cows.
Yeah, yeah, one cow or 2 cow, whether you're a kulak or the proletariat.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so basically what happens is inevitably the threshold is going to walk down, and it's going to end. You just tell what's going to happen. It's going to go 50 and then 20 and then 5 million and then 1 million. It's going to walk all the way down, and it's going to hit, number one, it's going to hit everybody in high tech.
Yeah.
So it's going to hit everybody who works at a tech startup, and then number 2, it's going to hit every California homeowner.
Well, and everybody who's building anything. So in the real estate sector, I mean, anybody building houses, anybody, to do that kind of stuff, the entity is generally worth $100 million. So it's a pretty worrisome idea. Now, look, by the way, this one probably, won't kind of get all the way through the system, but it might, and it's certainly proposed by the incumbent. And then if the incumbent gets reelected, he's certainly got a mandate. It's what the people want, and he did.
So that's their argument. And again, I also don't think this will get passed. I think they also knew it wouldn't get passed. The problem is the tone of the administration being open to these types of ideas is what they're against. And that is going to get a lot of people potentially also against a Biden administration that operates like that. Palantir 2872. IWM is now red, folks. Small caps go down 1%. Palantir goes green. NVIDIA slightly comes back to the 120s, but it's still down on the day. Short QQQ is up 7%. QQQ down. S&P down 1.13. And then Robinhood right here, 2472 on the day. Bitcoin still above 65,000 right now. So interesting market. I don't think it's easy to say if it's going small caps green, big tech red. Big tech's definitely red, but small caps also are red, and now both are recovering slightly. So I guess we'll see on the market close how this plays out. We do have a bunch of earnings today. We have United. That's a big one. And I think we also have, after United, SLG and Discover. So those are going to be the ones that are very important. Crown Castle as well, CCI. So going to be looking at those after the bell today. And we'll see how it ends up playing out. SoFi also doing strong. SoFi 776. Yeah. So let's see if SoFi can get back to that 785 range and keep doing what it needs to do. S&P right here, 558.82 right now. One quick piece of news on Palantir, Tesla. Let me check that. Tesla's recovering a little bit right here. It was at 250, now at 253. So apparently the Bavarian police have officially approved that they're going to be using Palantir. So here's the article I just pulled up. Bavarian politicians approved Palantir deployment for state police. This is in Germany, right? I'm pretty sure this is in Germany. Yeah, this is a German state. So Bavaria is a German state. So interesting, because if you guys have been following the Germany Palantir debacle, Germany's been very anti-Palantir. Maybe they're opening up. The bourgeoisie majority in the Bavarian state parliament has approved the necessary changes to the law. There is now a legal basis in the state for use of the Palantir software. With its approval, the state parliament has created the legal basis for the Vera analysis software from the controversial U.S. company. This is intended to help the state police evaluate existing data and prevent crimes in advance. Data from almost 40 million people are evaluated. It'll cost them 5.4 million euros, and per year it's 500,000 euros. Dude, this is cheap. 500 grand a year for the police department is nothing. So I think Palantir gave them a really sweet deal here because they just want to get back into the German government. And again, this is a bull case. I mean, this is not official PR yet, but if Karp says, well, now we're working with the Bavarian police on a Q2 earnings and says we are likely going to try to increase our international exposure because all these countries are realizing they need something like Palantir, maybe we start to get some more momentum from that perspective. Vince says it's the state with the best ski slopes. Okay, I did not know that. But Bavaria, Germany seems like they're going to be using Palantir. Again, in 2021, they called Palantir highly problematic. They really don't like Peter Thiel and Trump. I mean, I think that's the real reason they hated it. and CARP said on earnings, eventually you're going to have to use us. Maybe that's what's starting to happen. Bavaria is a state located in the southeastern part of Germany. It's the largest state in the country with an area of 70,548 kilometers and a population of 12.5 million people. Wow. All right, that's a big deal. Largest German state, 500 grand for Palantir. That's nothing. I imagine CARP gave them a very sweetheart deal and said, hey, just pay us something so that our system works. This is the Palantir way, right? You pay a little bit, prove that there's value, and then Palantir is like, all right, now you can pay us a lot more because you're not going to leave us. 500,000 a year, dude. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like that is absolutely peanuts for managing a police department. Now, maybe it's only in one municipality. Maybe it's not the entire state, and they're just like kind of testing it out. But still, that seems relatively cheap to be using in one of the largest states in Germany. So good stuff. Good stuff for Palantir. Okay, word of the day, and then I will get you guys out of here. Then we'll be back at 3:45. Robinhood 2483, not bad at all for Robinhood. Word of the day, bro. There's not even a definition. Do you guys see this? Where's the definition? Are they just like making it this like where? How's the definition not here on the website? Word of the day is parsimonious.
Parsimonious.
Now it says look it up. I don't know why they did that, but parsimony is characterized by or showing parsimony, frugal or stingy. Okay, so parsimonious, let's look at another website. Parsimonious is, just being frugal. So being cheap, I guess. Interesting. Look, NVIDIA keeps falling. The market might be parsimonious before they decide to buy the dip on NVIDIA. Maybe that's what's going to end up playing out. NVIDIA right now, let's do one last check. Tesla 253, SoFi 779, Meta 470, Robinhood 2482, Bitcoin going up 65,194, and then NVIDIA right here, 119.65 on the day. We'll see by the market close if NVIDIA goes even lower. It's already down 5%, which is like I think it was like $50 to $70 billion of market cap gone already. So I would imagine NVIDIA potentially bottoms out here, but we'll see how that plays out later into the day. Vince says, is Palantir small cap? So the moment is going into rotate into it, or is it an AI play that people are rotating out of it? I sold 35 covered calls and I'm regretting it as Palantir refuses to pull it back. I don't think Palantir is a small cap. 60 billion is definitely not small cap. But $35 would put it closer to 80 billion market cap. I think, again, we really have to see the guidance show those numbers. And Palantir maybe makes a run at $29 today. It topped out at $28.87. Right now, $28.73. If Palantir can increase the guidance and the AI play plus some rotation, not the small cap rotation, but some rotation goes into Palantir, especially from institutionals, then yeah, maybe 35 we crack this year. But if we're at 35, we're closing in on 80 billion, doing only 2.6 billion in revenue. It's just going to be a lot to pay, right? So really Q2 and their guidance is going to determine everything if we can get a chance to get to 35. But we'll see. Someone says, I am turtoisimonious. I like that one. I like that one. All right. S&P 500 inclusion. That is one thing. If we get included in December, even if the growth is not amazing, we saw Tesla got a nice run up going into the S&P. Maybe Palantir's already had some of that run up, but if we get another 5-6% pump just on the S&P news, which hopefully happens by the end of the year, then obviously that would be very, very bullish for Palantir. Robinhood 2477, Bitcoin 65,187, IWM still red on the day, SoFi 779, NVIDIA 119, and Tesla 253.56 on the day. All right, that's it for me. Brad says, please say turquoise. That will make my day. There you go. Turquoise. I need to get merch, dude. I need to get like a shirt that just says these ridiculous words that I've said throughout the past. We need to get them on a shirt and see what it looks like. All right, good stuff. I am now going to the DMV to renew my car inspection that is going to expire in a couple of days. So I need to go do that. So wish me luck. Hopefully it is not super crowded at the DMV. But I'm going to do that. And then market close will be back at 3:45. We got some earnings after the bell. And we'll see how it plays out today. All right. Thank you, everybody. Hope you guys had a good one. I'll see you guys at 3:45. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.